Evolution is not only the creator of the greatest diversity of life on Earth, but also the source of incredible mysteries and unexpected anomalies. In this video, we'll set out on a grand journey to explore the most astounding secrets of nature and understand how evolution shapes the world around us. To do this, we'll first take a look at our surroundings through different eyes. How do various animals see the world around them? Next, we'll discover why some beings can live after death and what drives their cells to continue their mission even after the body has died. Evolution can create not only majestic, but also strange and even frightening phenomena. We will learn about the most neglectful parents in the animal world, where evolutionary mechanisms have led to some shocking expressions of parental instinct. We'll also see the largest creatures ever to walk on the face of the earth and ponder, how did evolution allow them to reach such incredible sizes? Also, we'll take a glimpse into the laboratories of the future, where scientists strive to bring long-extinct species back to life. Let's dive together into this fascinating world of evolutionary wonders. The mysteries of evolution. Did you know that your brain can understand images that you've seen for just 13 milliseconds? The image projected onto the back of your eyes is actually inverted. The brain then flips it back for correct perception. Humans can see 100 degrees vertically and 190 degrees horizontally, and can distinguish about 1 million colors. By the way, what are the most active muscles in our body? That's right, the muscles that control the eyes. Moreover, our vision is so sensitive that it can detect a light beam consisting of just 5 to 7 photons. Yet, even more astonishing visual abilities occur in nature. Here, we're talking about animals, particularly insects that surround us. Their vision differs from ours because they have different evolutionary tasks and living conditions. In today's video, we'll delve into this fascinating topic, and you'll learn which animal can see 350 times better in the dark than humans, and which one can detect ultraviolet light. How do animals see this world? By the way, don't forget to hit like and subscribe, as this would show the YouTube algorithm that this video is worth watching. Shall we get started? First, let's find out how scientists learn about animal vision. For humans with our type of vision, it can be hard to imagine what it's like to see differently. The retina contains 2 types of receptors, rods and cones. Rods distinguish light and dark, while cones differentiate color. Just looking at rods and cones under a microscope can tell you whether an animal sees color. Brain scans can also reveal whether an animal reacts to colors. We can also determine if certain parts of the brain are activated by color changes. Of course, we can't say exactly how animals see. Our knowledge is based on various studies, and such diversity can sometimes be hard to grasp. For instance, we don't truly know what it's like to see ultraviolet rays, which help deer find lichen. Nor do we understand how mosquitoes see infrared radiation, which allows them to detect the most blood-rich areas. Remember, animals primarily need the vision to find food or to avoid becoming someone else's food. For example, insects have what is known as compound eyes, which consist of special cone-shaped elements called ommatidia. Each one perceives only a tiny piece of the object in front of the eyes, creating a mosaic image of the object. For example, honeybees have thousands of these elements in their eyes. Imagine how differently we would experience the world if we could see as animals or insects do. But first, let's explore how mammals, the closest to us, perceive the world. Let's start with dogs. You probably think that they see the world in black and white, right? Well, this is a misconception. Human eyes have 3 types of cones determining color. This allows us to distinguish light of 3 different wavelengths. Our brain perceives these wavelengths as blue, red, and green. Like most mammals, dogs have 2 types of cones. This allows them to distinguish blue from yellow, but not red from green. Therefore, their vision is similar to that of humans with red-green color blindness, who also lack the 3rd type of cone. By drawing parallels with such human vision, we can guess how dogs see, which is something like this. Take a look. To see blue and yellow colors, both dogs and humans rely on neurons inside the retina. They get excited in response to a beam of yellow light hitting the cone, but their activity is suppressed when exposed to blue light. As a result, dogs discern blue and yellow. However, red and green light act neutrally on the neurons in dogs. That means no signal is sent from these colors, and the brain doesn't perceive them. As a result, where you might see a red or green tomato, dogs likely perceive it in black and white. How then can they distinguish red from green? Typically, red objects appear darker than green ones, so a dark red apple will most likely be red. Interestingly, some data suggests dogs may see more shades of blue than we do, and are better adapted to twilight, although they get a blurrier image. And finally, they are much better at detecting movement so that prey wouldn't escape them. The misconception that dogs see everything upside down arises from the fact that the image on their retina is indeed inverted. But this is also true for humans. However, our brains correctly orient these images. For example, a dog lowers its head to drink, not raises it. So the only creatures that see upside down for lack of flying dogs might be flying foxes. Now let's look at the world through the feline eyes. Like dogs, they are crepuscular creatures, meaning they are active at dawn and dusk, which influences their vision. Cats possess 6 to 8 times more cells for detecting objects in low light compared to humans, enabling them to see much more in what we perceive as darkness. They also have better peripheral vision and the ability to detect movement in the dark. Their field of vision spans 200 degrees, surpassing the 180 to 190 degrees typical in humans. So they see things this way. But cats don't surpass us in every aspect. Daylight, for instance, isn't their prime time. Humans have a greater number of cones for color perception, allowing us to discern a wide array of colors like red, yellow, orange, and brown. Whereas for cats, these colors look very similar. It's not precisely known which colors cats see. Some believe they primarily see blue or gray, while others suggest blue and yellow with hints of green. Regardless, their color perception generally falls short of human vision. Moreover, they see much worse up close. Whereas humans can clearly distinguish objects at 14 centimeters, 5.5 inches, cats require a distance of 25 centimeters, 10 inches. Their long-distance vision also isn't as sharp. You can easily spot a soccer ball at 30 meters, 100 feet. But for a cat, it needs to be within 6 meters, 20 feet. Thus, this furry friend will never enjoy a city panorama because they see blurrier at a distance. Let's move on to larger animals. What comes to mind when you think about an aversion to red rags? Bulls in a bullfight? However, that's another misconception. Actually, bulls don't distinguish the color red. Instead, they perceive shades of violet, gray, black, or various browns. Bullfighting, a traditional spectacle in Spain and other countries, involves a matador teasing the bull with a muleta, a crimson cloth on a stick. This has led to the widespread belief that bulls dislike red. Imagine, however, being in the bull's place at that moment. surrounded by thousands of screaming and noisy people. It's irritating and confusing. The waving cloth triggers an adrenaline rush and a fight or flight response in the bull. Thus, it's the sudden movement, not the color, that triggers the animal. Overall, bulls have excellent vision and a vast field of view. But unlike you, they see only a limited range of colors, generally in muted tones. Do you recall the two types of cones in dogs? Bulls have a similar setup. They distinguish parts of the spectrum from blue to violet and from yellow to green, but they don't see all shades of yellow and blue. Let's see through their eyes. What bulls really dislike are sharp contrasts of light and darkness. For example, a dark fence around a white building can make them nervous, just like shadows on objects, which they perceive as pits. For the same reason, bulls don't like to drink water with bright sun reflections, preferring moderately lit environments. They also poorly perceive distance to objects, leading them to occasionally charge towards a fence without realizing how close it is. Now, let's examine horses, animals with a nearly 350-degree field of vision. This is due to the placement of their eyes on the sides of their heads, which are much more mobile than those of birds. Therefore, horses don't need to turn their heads as much as birds to look forward. Horse vision differs from human vision in sharpness, distance, and the detection of peripheral movement. Approximately 23% of horses are nearsighted, needing to approach an object to see its details clearly. Conversely, 43% are farsighted. Details start to become clearer for them as they move away from the object. It often seems that horses have excellent vision. For example, a horse might raise its head, direct its ears, flare its nostrils, and widen its eyes at the sight of a distant bird flapping its wings. This is how the horse sharpens its view, stationary detail perception, and sense of smell. When we talk about vision, it's not always about size. Horse eyes are 8 times larger than human eyes, and the largest among terrestrial mammals. However, their visual acuity is significantly worse than ours when it comes to distinguishing fine details. For example, you might notice details from a distance of 9 meters, 30 feet, but a horse requires at most 6 meters, 20 feet for the same clarity. In other words, they need to get up to 50% closer to see the same thing as you. This is how a horse sees. The peak of horses' visual acuity is around the age of 7 and tends to decline as they get older. Their remarkable peripheral vision serves a vital purpose: to spot predators in time and escape from them in a millisecond. These fascinating creatures are known as tarsiers. Measuring just 8 to 16 centimeters, 3 to 6 inches, they are small enough to fit in your hand. Their diet consists of insects, small vertebrates, and bird eggs. They are also the only known primates that communicate using ultrasound. As you've noticed, tarsiers' eyes are quite large compared to their bodies. Each is about the size of this predator's brain. Interestingly, tarsiers cannot move their eyeballs. If they want to look right or left, they need to turn their heads. Despite this limitation, their eye structure indicates that vision is crucial for them. Tarsiers are capable of seeing and catching insects and small birds, even in pitch darkness. This capability stems from the abundance of rods which distinguish light from darkness in the back of their eyes, unlike cones which discern color. As a result, their eyes function like night vision goggles in the animal kingdom. Here they are. Researchers from Dartmouth claim that the last common ancestor of the currently living tarsiers possessed very sharp trichromatic vision, similar to that of modern marmosets and apes. This typically implies a diurnal lifestyle. However, tarsiers are primarily nocturnal, Scientists believe early tarsiers were adapted to low-light conditions, such as twilight or bright moonlight. Such conditions were dark enough for the development of large eyes, but still not bright enough to maintain trichromatic color vision. Have you heard the expression blind as a bat? Actually, it's misleading because bats are far from being blind. Perhaps the expression arose due to their fast and erratic flight pattern. The visual acuity of bats varies from one species to another. Larger species, megabats, have big eyes and rely on vision during flight and foraging. Most smaller species, or microbats, use echolocation for these purposes, although they typically have smaller eyes. Nevertheless, they still rely on vision for daily activities and detecting objects beyond the effective range of echolocation, which is about 10 to 20 meters, 33 to 66 feet. They need echolocation to find fruits, insects, and small animals. Their vision is even sharper than that of most humans. But unlike humans, they lead a nocturnal lifestyle and have excellent hearing. Bats mostly hunt late at night. Some species can even perceive colors thanks to two light-sensitive proteins in the back of their eyes: S-opsin, which detects blue and ultraviolet light, and L-opsin, which detects red and green light. However, many species lack one of these proteins, resulting in complete color blindness. Certain bats from Central and South America have independently lost their ability to see blue and ultraviolet light, consequently losing their color vision. Thus, the expression "sees like a bat" actually means that a person has excellent vision. Since we're talking about flying creatures, let's imagine what it's like to see the world from a bird's eye view. And it's worth starting with those whose vision is so acute that they can discern details in an area of 13 square kilometers, 5 square miles. You've guessed it, these are eagles. Not only do they observe what happens on the left and right, but also notice when someone approaches them from behind. These birds see 4 to 8 times better than the average human. Although an eagle might weigh about 4.5 kilograms, 10 pounds, their eyes are roughly the same size as those of humans. What we see clearly at a distance of 1.5 meters, 5 feet, is equally clear to an eagle from 6 meters, 20 feet. So they see things this way. To fully understand an eagle's vision, consider this. The human retina has a pit with 200,000 cones per millimeter, where an eagle's retina has 2 pits, each containing 1 million cones per millimeter. What advantages does this give? For instance, if you were an eagle, you could spot a rabbit from a distance of 3.2 kilometers, 2 miles. While diving for an attack, an eagle's vision remains sharp and clear throughout the approach. Moreover, eagles' eyes are positioned on either side of their heads, offering nearly a panoramic view. Their field of vision is 340 degrees, and they turn their heads every 5 seconds. But that's not all. They perceive ultraviolet light too. These birds can track a tiny vole from the sky by the ultraviolet rays reflected from the animal's waist. Cool, right? Eagles rule during the day, but once the sun sets, nocturnal predators like owls take over at night. Just like in humans, their piercing eyes are located at the front of their heads. When the fields of vision from both eyes overlap, it results in 3-dimensional or binocular vision, a feature shared with humans and many predatory animals. This enables them to accurately measure distance and precisely time their attacks. In fact, owls have the most forward-facing eyes among all bird groups. Unlike us, they have an additional optical advantage: nictitating membranes. These semi-transparent third eyelids protect the eyes from debris when the owl swoops in for an attack. Owls' eyes are exceptionally large, so they capture enough light to see even after sunset. They make up to 5% of the total body mass of these birds. To put this into perspective, your eyes make up about 0.0003% of your total weight. Their pupils can dilate significantly, maximizing light absorption on the light-sensitive retina at the back of the eye. The human retina has 20 rods for every cone, whereas owls have a ratio of more than 30 rods for every cone. That's why they are so good at detecting movement in the dark. The eyes of some owl species are 100 times more sensitive in low light than yours. This is how they see. The only visual limitation for owls is their farsightedness. This is partly compensated by sensitive bristles around their beaks, giving them another way to perceive objects. Parrots' visual acuity is comparable to that of humans. They can notice an eagle soaring high above the clouds and flying off into the distance. Their retinas contain specialized cones that can capture ultraviolet light. Each of these cones contains a drop of colored oil, which acts as both a microlens and a light filter, enhancing the bird's ability to distinguish colors. Therefore, parrots perceive the same shades as humans, but with increased brightness and a clearer distinction between similar colors. Something like this. Parrots' eyes, located on the sides of their heads, offer a nearly 300-degree field of view. Such vision helps them spot predators long before they attack. What else helps parrots with this? The frame rate on a television screen is 60 to 100 frames per second, with only high-end models exceeding that rate. But a parrot's eye can capture more than 150 frames per second. No wonder they notice even small movements and changes in their environment, enabling them to fly away in time if threatened. However, parrots do have some limitations. Their depth perception and ability to move their eyeballs are inferior to humans. For instance, humans can rotate their eyes about 50 degrees horizontally, whereas parrots can only manage about 20 degrees. However, their visual acuity is 2 to 8 times higher than that of some mammals. Have you ever tried sneaking up on a pigeon? It's quite difficult, unless it's a city pigeon already accustomed to people. They're constantly vigilant and well aware of their surroundings, essential for their survival. Pigeons always stay alert, and their excellent monocular vision, with eyes on either side of their heads, helps them avoid danger. These birds have to constantly refocus when looking at objects on the ground. Nonetheless, they possess superior optical characteristics. They see 135 degrees vertically and 340 degrees horizontally, and can also distinguish ultraviolet light. It's no surprise that clothes reflecting ultraviolet rays scare and annoy them. Something like this. They can also spot objects at much greater distances than humans. Interestingly, it's not due to the vision sharpness, but because they can maintain vigilance for extended periods. This trait, among others, led the U.S. Coast Guard to employ pigeons in search and rescue operations at the end of the 20th century. The birds were trained to recognize red, yellow, and orange objects, colors typically used for life jackets and other emergency rescue equipment. Upon spotting such objects, the birds would peck a switch, turning on a light. Interestingly, they retained alertness throughout even 3-hour missions. Pigeons' ability to distinguish 5 color channels, compared to the 3 typically perceived by humans, aids them in this task. And what about their night vision? It's better than yours. But it depends on the brightness of the moon and other surrounding light sources. Nonetheless, they are diurnal birds and only move at night in extreme necessity. Imagine seeing 8 times better than you do right now. That's how hawks see the world. This remarkable vision is common to various hawk species. They have incredibly sharp vision due to the high density of photoreceptors in their eyes. This enables them to detect even the slightest movements from great distances. This sense makes them excellent hunters, capable of spotting prey from afar with remarkable precision. Most hawks can see clearly at distances of 30 meters, 100 feet, a range within which red-tailed hawks, for instance, can spot mice and other small creatures. They possess a 280-degree field of vision and a 40-degree binocular overlap. This means hawks can focus on a single object with both eyes, like humans, ensuring a clear image for highly accurate attacks. Moreover, hawks have an exceptional depth perception. These experienced hunters rely heavily on their vision for survival and success in the wild. They perceive a broader range of colors than humans and can detect details invisible to us thanks to their ability to see ultraviolet light. Now, let's take a look at the world through their eyes. Their vision is complemented by sharp hearing. They pick up even the faintest sounds made by potential prey, such as young birds nesting in trees or small rodents rustling in leaves, long before a regular human would notice their presence. The combination of excellent vision and keen hearing has made hawks some of the most successful hunters in nature. There is a joke that this bird's eye is bigger than its brain. Have you already visualized this picture? This is about the ostrich. Yes, the largest representative of the bird class. For example, the African ostrich reaches 2.75 meters, 9 feet in height, and weighs up to 156.8 kilograms, 346 pounds. So maybe there is some truth to the joke? The brain in ostriches is about 58 millimeters, 2.2 inches long, and 42 millimeters, 1.6 inches wide. It weighs up to 42 grams, 1.5 ounces. The ostrich's eye is round and the largest among all land vertebrates, 50 millimeters, 1.7 inches. Yes, it is even bigger than in elephants. At the same time, according to various reports, it weighs up to 60 grams, 2.1 ounces. So, in weight, it really outweighs the brain. The ostrich needs its impressively sized eyes to find food and spot predators. For example, ostriches can see a moving object like a jackal or hyena at a distance of 3 kilometers, 1.9 miles during the day, and 50 meters, 164 feet at night. See through the eyes of an ostrich. Impressive, don't you think? These birds also have a wider field of vision than humans. Each eye can see about 150 to 170 degrees, and the right and left fields overlap by 20 to 30%, which means our character can see 300 degrees. Now, let's come down to Earth from the clouds and see the world through the eyes of reptiles. There are over 3,600 known species of snakes, and each species has its own hunting style, which largely determines their vision. Researchers have found that daytime hunting snakes have lenses in their eyes blocking ultraviolet light, which allows them to see clearly in bright conditions, something like what you see on your screen right now. On the other hand, nocturnal snakes have lenses that allow more ultraviolet light, enhancing their night vision. While there's much less ultraviolet light after sunset, it doesn't disappear entirely. These reptiles don't have eyelids. Instead, they have transparent scales covering their eyes, protecting them from dirt and debris. These scales are shed along with the rest of their skin during molting. Have you noticed how quick snakes are? Their lenses are more convex than ours, allowing for sharper focus and quicker reactions to objects. Many believe that snakes don't see colors. In reality, the retinas of some species contain rods and cones, which help distinguish light and color. The majority of their receptors are rods, sensitive to light and movement, but not to color. However, as we've already mentioned, they also have cones. But unlike us, they perceive 2 colors, not 3. Indeed, snakes see the world differently than we do. In fact, they can see so much more. Species such as vipers, pythons, and boas possess special organs, pits between their nostrils and eyes that detect infrared radiation. Therefore, they have 2 types of vision: movement-oriented daytime vision and thermal nighttime vision. So imagine, even in complete darkness, snakes can see the thermal outline of a mouse or other small prey, making them exceptional nocturnal hunters. The leopard gecko, or spotted leopard eublephar, is a unique species of lizard. They are common in the desert areas of India, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Nepal, and Iran. They are also popular as pets, admired for their yellow and black spots. But have you ever wondered how they see us through their eyes? Leopard geckos neither perceive ultraviolet nor infrared light. While they have excellent peripheral vision, they are nearsighted and struggle to focus on distant objects. Yet, they are highly sensitive to moving objects. Take a look at how they see. Overall, these lizards have good vision and see the world in colors and details. As nocturnal creatures, their eyes contain more rods than cones, enhancing their ability to see well in low light. Some estimates suggest they see their surroundings 350 times better at night than we do. During the day, their vision is almost as good as that of humans. Leopard geckos also possess trichromatic vision, meaning they have 3 types of cones in their eyes, sensitive to blue, green, and red colors. However, they perceive blue and green colors much better than red shades. They can distinguish colors even in dim light. Scientists conducted an experiment where geckos were fed with colored tweezers under moonlight. It turned out that the animals easily distinguished blue from green, but not orange from red. Leopard geckos are primarily active at dawn and dusk, when their environment is predominantly purple and blue. This allows them to see their surroundings more clearly. Let's now explore our next creature who sees well both day and night. Submerged underwater, it leaves only its eyes and nostrils above the surface. Interestingly, it has a third, transparent eyelid that protects the eyes underwater. This creature's eyes are uniquely positioned. If you look at them from the front, it seems like the animal is looking directly at you. From the side, it seems to look sideways. Such positioning gives them the advantage of very good peripheral vision. You've probably guessed that we are talking about a crocodile. Their eyes are about the same size as ours, 24 millimeters, 0.9 inches in width. Unlike you, however, crocodiles can see at night. In daylight, their pupils narrow to thin slits, while at night they can fully dilate to help them see better. Although they don't see very clearly at night, they can distinguish the outlines of fish, deer, crustaceans, zebras, or other prey animals, thanks to tiny mirror-like receptors at the back of their eyes, improving their night vision. They don't need to worry about other predators, but they are vigilant about rival crocodiles in their territory. This is how they see. Additionally, crocodiles see underwater, thanks to the very same mirror-like receptors. What's more, they see color underwater, just like they do on land. Their most remarkable feature is the ability to retract their eyeballs into the sockets to protect them during a fight. Crocodiles don't need to move their eyes when scanning the horizon, because, as you remember, they have excellent peripheral vision. So, if you're reaching for a ball in the water and a crocodile is looking the other way, chances are it still sees you. Would you like to see another reptile that has survived since the time of the dinosaurs? Meet the tuatara, Sphenodon punctatus, or Guttaria, a species native to New Zealand. This ancient creature has lived through a significant global temperature drop, glaciation, mountain formation, and tremendous changes in flora and fauna. Today, the tuatara is the only surviving member of the Sphenodontia order. It looks like a miniature dragon and can live for 100 years. Its distinctive feature is a third eye. This unpaired eye is much smaller than the paired ones and is only visible in young specimens. In adults, it's covered with a thin layer of scales. The animal's skull often has a special opening to accommodate the third eye. Now imagine seeing the world with 3 eyes. What a colorful perspective and view would open up. But let's dispel this notion. This third eye is a light-sensitive organ that doesn't perceive images. It's also called the parietal eye. It has a retina, nerve, and a lens-like structure, but lacks an iris, eyelids, and eye muscles. It might once have been a fully functioning organ. Currently, it's believed to play a role in thermoregulation and establishing circadian rhythms, the biological clock. But what about the tuatara's other 2 eyes? They're just as remarkable, possessing advanced night vision and the ability to focus independently of each other. They contain an additional layer of tapetum lucidum, a special layer in the vascular eye coating of vertebrates. It reflects light back onto the retina, so the tuatara's eyes glow and see better in the dark. Observe the difference. Additionally, each eye is equipped with a nictitating membrane, a third eyelid. And now we finally reach a remarkable reptile that can spot a tiny fly 10 meters, 33 feet away. Until recently, it was believed that its eyes moved completely independently of each other, creating 2 different perspectives of the world. However, Israeli researchers have recently discovered that this lizard's eye movements are in fact coordinated. We're talking about the chameleon. Of course, it's known for its color-changing camouflage, but its extraordinary eyes are no less remarkable. They can track 2 separate targets simultaneously, one with each eye. Alternatively, one eye can follow a target while the other surveys the surroundings. During experiments using video games, scientists placed chameleons in front of a screen showing an insect moving from side to side. The animals reacted by shooting their tongues at this virtual meal. In another game, they showed one prey in the center of the screen, visible to both eyes of the lizard. Then the image split into 2 insects flying to opposite sides of the screen. The chameleon's eyes tracked both targets, 1 per eye, until one was chosen. Notice that while one eye tracks the prey, the other tracks its own target, but at some point converges to the first to focus on one target. This means that one of them is a tracking eye, while the other one is a converging eye. From this, we can infer that the chameleon's brain controls each eye independently, but there's also a higher level of control coordinating both eyes. Thus, each eye kind of knows precisely what the other one is seeing. Something like what you see in this image. Additionally, the chameleon's eyes protrude on either side of its head, providing the lizard with a panoramic view, a remarkable optical tool created by nature itself. So we move on to those who can distinguish ultraviolet wavelengths. Insects. Our character has huge spherical eyes with enhanced color vision. Meet the dragonfly. To give you an idea of their vision, let's remind you that we humans have tricolor, or so-called trichromatic vision. We see colors as a combination of red, blue, and green. But dragonflies are more exciting. Depending on the species, they have 4 to 5 types of opsins, i.e., much more than humans. Yes, the dragonfly world is much more colorful than ours. But even more interesting is that their DNA contains no less than 11 and in some species, as many as 30 genes of different visual opsins. In other words, in the process of evolution, the color vision has varied to the most incredible extent, and some of the possibilities of such genetic diversity they use even now. Japanese biologist Ryo Furuhashi in Japan also found that dragonflies use different opsins at different ages. For example, larvae of some species that hatch in sand usually lack opsins that perceive the color blue. Other studies have shown that dragonflies can see ultraviolet light. That is, dragonflies distinguish colors better than humans, which means they could see flowers like this. But in addition to being excellent at distinguishing colors, dragonflies are also great at seeing targets quickly. Their vision is so fast that they can decide in less than 0.05 of a second whether a flying object is likely to be prey. Now imagine flipping through a notebook with a drawing of a flying bird. If we do it quickly, we'll actually see a mini video and won't notice the pages turning. But to the dragonfly, thanks to its supervision, the process will seem much slower, and it will see exactly the turning of the pages. Where we see 60 images per second, it sees about 200, which means it can see objects that we simply can't see. Even the dragonfly's movements are so fast that we would only be able to see them in detail if we filmed them with a camera that slows them down 80 times. With their impressive 360-degree visual field and other abilities, it's no surprise that these creatures have been around for over 300 million years. That's right, they predate the dinosaurs. Now, let's dive into aquatic life. More specifically, mantis shrimp has some of the most complex eyes in the animal kingdom. Mantis shrimp has up to 16 types of light-sensitive cones, compared to 3 in humans, and they can see ultraviolet, visible, and polarized light. Polarized light is a light in which all light waves point in the same direction. Usually, light waves travel in all directions, but when light is polarized, the waves are filtered and travel in only one direction. It can happen naturally, such as when light reflects off water or glass, or with special filters. Polarized light is often used in sunglasses to reduce glare. That's how objects look through such glasses. As you can see, the lack of glare makes the environment appear more contrasting. Mantis shrimp are the only known animals that can see light with circular polarization, which means that the direction of the electric and magnetic fields changes circumferentially as the wave propagates. Now let's take a closer look at their amazing organs of vision. The eyes of mantis shrimp consist of tens of thousands of ommatidia, meaning elements of facet eyes, as in insects. The very structure of the eye of the mantis crayfish is very unusual. The eye is divided into 3 sections with 2 hemispheres, separated by a narrow linear middle band. Each hemisphere contains rows of ommatidia with different functions like color detection, polarization, and motion. And thanks to these same 2 hemispheres, the mantis shrimp can perceive depth with one eye. They have 6 rows of modified ommatidia in the center of the eye, the one above-mentioned middle band. That's where the real magic happens. The first 4 rows detect ordinary and ultraviolet light visible to human eyes. The ommatidia of the last 2 rows contain tiny hairs, which some scientists believe are responsible for polarized vision. But can the mantis crayfish distinguish more colors than humans? A team of scientists led by Australian neuroscientist Justin Marshall experimented. They trained test subjects of the species Haptosquilla trispinosa to recognize one of 10 specific wavelengths between 400 and 650 nanometers, showing them 2 colors and rewarding them with frozen shrimp or mussels when they chose the right one. Eventually, the mantis shrimp could distinguish other colors, 50 to 100 nanometers, up or down the spectrum. But when the difference was reduced to 12 to 25 nanometers, the crayfish could no longer distinguish them. In contrast, the human eye distinguishes wavelengths at 1 to 5 nanometers. Each type of photoreceptor seems to pick up a particular color, detecting it less sensitively than the human eye. Thus, the transitions between colors are not as smooth for them as for us. Now, without leaving the water, let's look into the largest eyes on the planet. They are at least 25 centimeters, 10 inches in diameter. That's the size of a soccer ball. Who owns such huge eyes? Could it be the largest fish eyes? Nope. The record holder here is a swordfish with 9 centimeter, 3.5 inch eyes. Could we be talking about the largest animal that ever lived, the blue whale? No. His eyes are only 11 centimeters, 4.3 inches. They'd fit into our character's pupils. Let's not tease you anymore. We're talking about a giant squid. So why are its eyes so big? Dan Erik Nielsen and Eric Warrant from Lund University in Sweden believe that the squid has developed its eyes to cope with some important tasks for the animal world, most likely to detect in time one of the largest predators in the world, the sperm whale. The squid's eyes are located on either side of its head, meaning it doesn't have the binocular vision needed to judge distances. It could be hypothesized that the big-eyed squid sees farther than the small-eyed squid. It would help find both prey and a mate. But Nielsen and Warrant found that the eyes see farther if they grow larger, only until the pupil exceeds 2.5 centimeters, 1 inch. When the pupil grows to 3.5 centimeters, 1.4 inches, and the eye grows to 9 centimeters, 3.5 inches, it makes no sense to grow larger. A larger size will not make the vision better. That's why this is the maximum eye size of a fish, although the head of a swordfish could accommodate larger vision organs. A giant squid weighs about the same as a swordfish, but its eye is about 3 times larger. Why? Let's break it down. The large pupil allows the eye to collect every photon of light in the extraordinarily deep and dark waters where the squid lives. And huge eyes have advantages over just big eyes. For example, they are much better at detecting large objects emitting their own light at depths of more than 500 meters, 1,640 feet. That includes the already mentioned enemy of giant squid, the sperm whale. Wait a minute, but sperm whales don't glow, you might argue. And you'd be right. That's how it is. But they scare away tiny animals like jellyfish and crustaceans that flash in response. These flickering outlines would be too dim for most animals, but not for the giant squid. To him, it looks something like this. Its eyes can pick up this light from 120 meters, 394 feet away, and scan the water, looking for these flashes. They're also great at spotting details. And our next characters can avoid predators and find dark corners to hide in, even though they don't have eyes. How do they manage without them? And why did they appear on our list? The fact is, it's possible to see without conventional sight, but with the whole surface of your body. In this case, the whole body is one solid eye. At least, that's how sea urchins called purple Strongylocentrotus see, according to scientists' assumptions. They owe their name to the purple hue in their body coloration. These urchins live along the eastern coast of the Pacific Ocean, stretching from Ensenada, Mexico to British Columbia, Canada. They move with needles that act like stilts and specific tube feet. In general, Strongylocentrotus has a sedentary lifestyle. They leisurely explore the bottom in search of food. Their favorite treat is the giant brown algae, Macrocystis pyrifera. So how can their bodies see? The thing is, they have light-sensitive molecules, mostly in their legs and in tiny stalk-like appendages located between the spines. Altogether, they function like a retina. That's it. The sea urchins change the angle and direction of vision by retracting their feet. But the spines themselves play a role in all this. Scientists have suggested that they may help hedgehogs distinguish relatively fine details by shielding light from different angles. In any case, purple Strongylocentrotus see better than hedgehogs Echinometra lacunter and Echinometra viridis, which have fewer spines. Well, and of course, scientists conducted some interesting experiments to prove this. Sonke Johnson, a marine biologist at Duke University in North Carolina, together with colleagues, placed 39 purple Strongylocentratus on a lighted area with a width of 1.2 meters, 4 feet, and hung a black disc off the wall. And then the most intriguing thing happened. When the disc was almost 6 centimeters, 2.5 inches wide, the urchins showed no interest in it. But when its width reached about 9 centimeters, 3.5 inches, it caused a violent reaction. 2/3 of the subjects rushed towards it, and the remaining third away from it. In other words, it was probably considered a shelter by some and a predator by others. Of course, when we say rushing, we should take into account the speed of these guys. Watching them move is like watching paint dry. Some animals can survive without vital organs, in boiling water, and in a complete vacuum. Who are they? These heroes who can defy the physical laws of the universe. Animals that can live after death. Decapitation is immediately fatal to a person. Can it be any different for anyone else, you ask? Well, yes. For whom? Superhumans? Cyborgs? Actually, for example, for ordinary cockroaches. It's all about the structure and function of the internal organs. In humans, our tissues are oxygenated by a high-pressure circulatory system. If you cut the carotid arteries in the neck, you'll bleed out in minutes. Even if the cuts are immediately clamped, the body will not survive without nerve signals from the brain ordering the rest of the organs to breathe and function. Because when the head is severed, the brain's connection to the rest of the body is severed. The human respiratory apparatus is largely located in the head. There, our nose and mouth are the places where air enters our body. From there, the air enters the trachea and lungs, where the blood is saturated with oxygen. It carries oxygen to all the organs and tissues of the body, and in turn gets rid of the carbon dioxide produced by metabolic processes. In other words, if there is severe blood loss and blood pressure drops, oxygen will not be able to be delivered to all parts of the body, resulting in death. But cockroaches, like most insects, do things differently. They breathe through a network of tubes connected to openings called spiracles, located on the body's surface. In other words, oxygen is not transported through the circulatory system. Their brains mainly process sensory information from their eyes and antennae. But many other actions, such as running and responding to touch, are processed by mini-brains, ganglia, in each body segment. Ganglia are clusters of nerve tissue capable of performing basic functions responsible for reactions. Cockroaches can do many things without a brain, using only these ganglia. So what happens when a cockroach is decapitated? Actually, a pretty amazing thing. Its head can continue to live its own life for several hours, waving its antenna and reacting to light and other stimuli. It will also lose only a few drops of hemolymph, which replaces blood, and the wound will quickly close with something like a blood clot. The scientific study of the headless cockroach was conducted by neuroscientist George Horridge back in 1962. In the experiment, Headless cockroaches were held over a saline solution that shocked one of their legs with an electric current. Over time, the insects learned to keep their paws elevated to avoid electrocution. In another study that measured the heart rate of cockroaches that had not been decapitated, scientists could hardly hold the subjects as they tried to run away. But without heads, the cockroaches proved to be slow-moving and perfectly docile objects that didn't wriggle and run anywhere. A decapitated cockroach would eventually die of hunger and thirst, but that could happen in a few weeks. Yes, cockroaches are one of the most resilient species on Earth, but they aren't capable of causing after-death damage like our next heroes. If you disturb a live bee, it will probably sting you. But you can get stung even if the bee is dead. Bees have stingers attached to their belly, so if you look closely at one of them, you'll see a point protruding from the belly. Not every bee has a stinger, but female worker bees do, as they are responsible for protecting the hive. Male worker bees have larger abdomens, so they look more intimidating. But they don't have stings and can only buzz aggressively. So if you get stung by a bee, you can be sure it is a worker bee. How does it happen? The insect sits in a certain place, raises its abdomen, and stabs. Together with it, a poison called apitoxin enters the body. The active component of apitoxin, melittin, activates pain receptors. That's why a bee sting is so painful. It wouldn't be the same without the venom. But that's not all. Worker honeybees have serrated stingers. In other words, when the skin is punctured, the stinger gets stuck and breaks out with meat from the abdomen when the bee tries to pull it out. Then the insect flies away and dies. The injury caused by the ripped-out stinger is incompatible with life. Unlike wasps, which can sting several times, the bee dies after the first sting. And as long as the stinger is inside the wound, the venom continues to penetrate. The venom would not be released for long if the bees could sting and retract the stinger. However, if the stinger is stuck, it will continue to inject venom for 10 minutes, causing pain. It looks quite creepy when magnified because the stinger is moving and contracting. It's best to remove the stinger as soon as possible to minimize the effects of the sting. So now that we understand this whole process, the question arises, can someone get stung by a dead bee? You probably pictured a yellow and black zombie bee flying towards you, but it's a bit different. Imagine that the bee died with its stinger still intact and ended up on the floor or ground. If you accidentally step on it with bare feet, the stinger can penetrate the skin, so you'll get a sting. The venom in the stinger remains for some time, even after the bee is dead. So you will feel the same pain as if you were stung by a live bee. The situation is rare at home, but somewhere on a grassy plain or in a park, it is quite possible. So if you like to walk barefoot on grass, be careful. Now, let's look at the harmless, well-known representatives of fauna, which, however, can do unexpected tricks. We are talking about chickens. You've probably heard that they can run even after their heads have been chopped off. Does that mean that the brain in chickens is located somewhere else? No, it doesn't. It's a little bit different. Chickens have a pretty well-developed nervous system. Not as developed as humans, but broadly similar. Nerves run throughout the body, like a network of electrical wiring in a large building. Many of them end near the skin surface. Thanks to these nerve endings, we feel touch. They carry signals from the brain. And they also carry both communication signals to the brain. So the nerves can make a chicken move even after its head has been chopped off. That is when the connection to the brain is lost. Here's how it works. When you touch something, a small electrical current travels along a nerve to your brain to let it know what has happened. It's a bit like flipping a switch so that electricity travels down the cable and into the light bulb. When the signal hits the brain, it decides what to do about it and sends another small electrical current back along a different nerve called a motor nerve, signaling the muscles to move. Sometimes the signal doesn't necessarily have to reach the brain. It reaches certain groups of nerves in the spinal cord, and feedback is formed there. The conditioned decision about what to do is sent back along the motor nerve, and the person moves their arm or leg. A simple example: you touch something very hot, and your spinal cord reacts instantly. You pull your hand away before you realize what has happened. That is called reflex action. When a chicken's head is chopped off, the pressure of the axe activates all the nerve endings in the neck, causing a small but extensive electrochemical discharge. It travels along all the nerves that lead back to the muscles, ordering them to move. The result is that the chicken can flap its wings and run, even though it's already essentially dead. But beheading doesn't always end in death for chickens. The example of Miracle Mike, a cockerel, proves this. After his head was cut off, he lived for another, wait a minute, 18 months. Is this a prank, or have some magical forces intervened? No and no. That is a scientifically documented case, and we'll explain it all in a moment. In Mike's case, the farmer who tried to slaughter him hit the axe too high, and part of the bird's brain was left on the top of his neck. That's what allowed the rooster to survive. He did not bleed to death because a blood clot had formed. Why was the brain so oddly positioned? It happens when the skull doesn't have enough space for the whole brain because of the large eye sockets. That's why part of it appears in the upper neck. How did the victim go a year and a half without food? Actually, he was fed, although it looked very unusual and creepy. Mike had milk and water dripped into what was left of his throat. This unique case made Mike famous all over America. Every year in Colorado in May, they hold Mike the Headless Chicken Day. Of course, despite the oddity of the situation, Mike's second head did not grow back. But our next characters show incredible regenerative abilities and prove that the brains of some living creatures can be located in the most unexpected places. Octopuses are capable of amazing things. For example, they can solve puzzles, solve jigsaw puzzles, open jars, change their shape and color, and even edit their own RNA. The latter is especially cool because RNA is not DNA, which contains the entire genetic code of an octopus, but still something similar. It turns out that the octopus as a species is literally one step away from being able to change its own genetic code. Such an ability is the dream of futurologists and transhumanists. But that's not all. Their tentacles are literally willful, making decisions of their own without instructions from the brain. The octopus has 500 million neurons, but more than half of them are outside the brain. Where are they? Each tentacle has a small cluster of nerve cells called ganglia. Remember when we talked about them in the part about cockroaches? One cluster has evolved to become the dominant brain. Others control movement, meaning that octopuses actually have 8 independent mini-brains and a larger central brain. These peripheral ganglia can communicate with each other via a neural ring, allowing the tentacles to coordinate movements independently of the brain. What does this unique biology yield? The severed limbs of the octopus can respond to stimuli even an hour after separation. They can reach out, grasp, and even try to bring food to the no longer existing mouth. It reminds you of the crawling hand from the Addams Family, right? So, some information bypasses the central brain completely. How come? Well, it's just that the brain involvement isn't always necessary. Neurons in octopus tentacles can receive sensory information from the environment and then move as they need to do simple tasks. What does this bring, you ask? A weighty evolutionary advantage, of course. Just imagine an extra 8 thinking centers on processing incoming stimuli. It allows the octopus to react much faster. So their nervous system is very different from the highly centralized nervous system of humans and other vertebrates. But how do you know whether a tentacle is controlled by a central brain or ganglion at a particular moment? The University of Washington team tracked the mollusk's movements and came to the following conclusion. Perhaps the clue is in the synchronicity. If the tentacles move together, the dominant brain is likely responsible for the action. But if each is acting on its own, they are most likely guided by their own mini-brains. By the way, since a tentacle has a brain, is it possible to grow a new octopus from such a severed limb, just as a starfish grows from a ray? We will disappoint you. No, such a miracle will not happen. But an octopus can regenerate a tentacle. So what exactly happens when an octopus loses a tentacle? Within 3 days, a whole cascade of chemical signals will signal the formation of a bump at the site of the cut. A mass of stem cells and a huge number of blood vessels will rush to the site. Over the next 100 days, the end of the tentacle will grow back. This reduction is controlled by a protein called protein acetylcholinesterase, or ACHE. We have this protein too, but it is less active. Scientists hope to use the ACHE trick to regenerate limbs in humans, although this is, of course, a very distant prospect. But the secret of our next heroes could potentially help cure humans too. These are tailed amphibians, salamanders. Their limbs and some of their organs can regrow. So the genes of these amazing amphibians are the subject of research by many scientists around the world. One of them is Professor Ellie Tanaka of the Research Institute of Molecular Pathology in Vienna. She has been studying salamanders for decades. Tanaka and her team study body regeneration in 4-legged animals and try to understand why it happens in some species and not others. Salamanders are the best regenerators of all 4-legged animals, and the axolotl is one species of salamander that reproduces very well, even in the laboratory. It can regenerate a whole organ or limb in correct proportions. The growth time of the limb is always the same, regardless of the amount of tissue being replaced. The young axolotl can regenerate a limb in about 40 to 50 days. But as the salamander matures, this process slows down. Just imagine, a month and a half and a whole leg of a correct shape grows with nerves, muscles, and bones. The main mystery Tanaka is trying to solve is how a limb loss causes the salamander's genome to start developing the lost body part from scratch. Studies show that the bodies of these animals use almost identical molecular mechanisms as were used during the first development of the limb. In other words, salamander cells can become less specialized and start the process from scratch. At the same time, they are flexible enough to grow bone, ligament, tendon, or cartilage. Tanaka doesn't expect human cells to behave in the same way as salamander cells. But she hopes her team will be able to create a group of human stem cells that can regenerate much more efficiently. So, in theory, people will be able to recover more quickly from serious injuries. But of course, it's too early to talk about superpowers like Wolverine from X-Men. Another group of researchers conducted an experiment in which they removed the appendages of 2 species of ray-finned fish, zebrafish and bashir, and the already mentioned axolotl salamander. Each of these species can regrow fins or legs. They then compared the RNA from the amputation sites. As a result, the scientists found 10 different microRNAs, little fragments of RNA that are the same in both species. What's more, they also seemed to function in the same way. This discovery partly supports the idea that these species shared a common ancestor 420 million years ago, who probably already knew how to grow limbs. How is this helpful for humans? Perhaps these microRNAs in humans can be programmed to perform the same tasks as those in salamanders and fish. By the way, have you ever wondered why salamanders and other similar animals need regenerative ability? Where can their limbs end up? In the mouth of a predator, of course. So these abilities will be very helpful to them. And our next heroes can become literally the living dead. Are we talking about the White Walkers from Game of Thrones? Or the zombies from one of Hollywood's many blockbusters? Actually, we're talking about ordinary frogs. Yes, you heard right. Frogs are amazing animals. Despite their fragile appearance, they have countless strategies for coping with the harshest climates. They can be found above the Arctic Circle, in deserts, humid rainforests, and between. Some of their strategies for survival in extreme conditions are simply ingenious. For example, hibernation and estivation. That is, winter and summer hibernation respectively. Hibernation is a typical response to a cold winter in temperate climates. Once the amphibian finds a suitable location protected from winter weather and predators, its metabolism slows down tremendously. With the onset of spring, it wakes up and begins to feed and reproduce. Aquatic frogs, such as the leopard frog and American bullfrog, usually overwinter underwater. Terrestrial frogs tend to overwinter on land. American toads and other frogs that dig well burrow deep into the soil, below the freezing line. Some other frogs, such as the wood frog, instead seek out deep cracks in logs or rocks, or burrow deeply into leaves. These places are not as well protected from cold weather and can freeze with their inhabitants. Yet, the frogs do not die. Why? They have real antifreeze in them. The high concentration of glucose in the frog's vital organs prevents freezing and the formation of ice crystals, which are destructive to the body's soft tissues. The blood also begins to produce a mixture of glucose and glycogen. As the temperature drops, this mixture is absorbed into the cells. It keeps each of them elastic and prevents ice crystals from forming. So what happens to a partially frozen amphibian? It will stop breathing and its heart will stop beating. The frog will look completely dead. But when the temperature rises above freezing, the frozen parts of the frog will thaw and its heart and lungs will start working again. A frog can go through several cycles of this hardening and thawing. And summer hibernation is a response to the prolonged dry season in some tropical regions. The most famous estivating frogs are the ornate horned frog from South America and the African bullfrog. When the dry season begins, they burrow into the soil and hibernate for several months. But before that, they do a clever trick. They shed several layers of skin, forming a virtually waterproof cocoon that envelops the entire body, leaving only the nostrils open to breathe. The frogs remain in this form throughout the dry season. When the rains resume, they break free of their coverings and wade through the wet soil to the surface. The situation is similar for some species of flies. Some species are so resistant to freezing that they can even survive immersion in liquid nitrogen at temperatures of almost minus 200 degrees Celsius, minus 328 degrees Fahrenheit, with no ill effects. Vladimir Kostal from the Czech Academy of Sciences was fascinated by the ability of some insects to survive freezing. He noticed this process differs between resilient and vulnerable species, so he investigated the topic further. He took fruit flies for his experiment. They live in the comfortable conditions of the Mediterranean or even warmer tropical zones, and do not have to experience temperatures below 10 to 15 degrees Celsius, 50 to 59 degrees Fahrenheit. At temperatures of 10 degrees Celsius, 50 degrees Fahrenheit and below, larval development stops. And at minus 5 degrees Celsius, 23 degrees Fahrenheit, the insect dies of hypothermia in a few hours. At the same time, Kostal and his colleagues noticed that the malt fly, Chymomyza costata, a relative of Drosophila, is very resistant to frost. Its larvae successfully survive freezing in liquid nitrogen and thawing. Also, an important point. During the study, it turned out that Chymomyza costata at lower temperatures accumulates a large amount of amino acid proline, which has good antifreeze qualities. With this knowledge in mind, scientists have tried to improve the cold tolerance of Drosophila fruticosa. How? Approximately as in humans, with the help of hardening and a special diet. In the food of the experimental subject, large doses of proline were added, and a specific temperature regime was established in the cage with larvae. For part of the day, the temperature there was 11 degrees Celsius, 52 degrees Fahrenheit, and then it was reduced to 6 degrees Celsius, 43 degrees Fahrenheit. In this way, the scientists raised several generations of Drosophila and placed the larvae in a minus 5 degrees Celsius, 23 degrees Fahrenheit environment. About half of the water in their bodies turned to ice. Do you think that was the sad end of the experiment? It wasn't. Some individuals survived the thawing. About 15% of the larvae successfully transitioned to the pupal stage, and about 9% grew into normal adults. Amazing, right? Why are some animals big and others small? How is this defined? Are there size limits? Why were dinosaurs so huge, but now there are no such living organisms? Is it good to be huge? And is it possible for a real Godzilla or King Kong to exist? Let's dive in to find out this and so much more. Giant animals. The first dinosaurs were by no means giants. Large species were 3 to 4 meters long, and small ones literally were under their feet, reaching even less than 50 centimeters and weighing up to 2 kilograms. But then something changed, and the dinosaurs grew rapidly, generation after generation. Bipedal species reached 13 to 14 meters, and quadrupeds could grow up to 25 to 35 meters long. Record holders like Diplodocus holorum reached 39 meters. It was even called Seismosaurus, which is symbolic because seismos means earthquake in Greek. The steps taken by these giants would certainly easily be registered by seismic instruments like light tremors. At first glance, you might not be impressed by dozens of meters. Well, it's not a mile. But everything comes into perspective when visually compared to a person. In the entire history of our planet, these reptiles still occupy the first place among the largest land animals. It's hard to compare our modern elephants with them, and even any ancient mammals too. For example, the largest and heaviest mammals ever to have lived on land are the Indrocotherium. They were almost 5 meters high and weighed 17 to 20 tons. They lived about 20 to 30 million years ago in many parts of Asia and mainly fed on leaves and branches. Now, how is it that such two evolutionarily successful animal groups are so different in terms of size? A part of the answer lies in the way they produce their offspring. Like you and me, Indricotherium was a placental mammal. This means that an individual bears its cub in its own womb until the moment when it becomes more or less viable. Large mammals, such as giraffes, rhinos, or elephants, raise one young at a time, and the gestation period is quite long. For example, elephants carry their young for over 2 years. Some species of animals don't even live that long. But the largest dinosaurs didn't need to bear their cubs at all because they just lay eggs. The largest dinosaur laid eggs no larger than a soccer ball. But how does this difference in offspring production affect size? Large mammals give birth to large babies. It takes a lot of time and energy. Simply put, growing becomes too taxing for the body, as the lion's share of resources goes to growing the fetus. Plus, pregnancy itself makes the individual more vulnerable. Dinosaurs completely avoided this problem. Instead of having large babies, huge dinosaurs laid relatively small eggs that contained equally small babies. The vulnerability of small-growing dinosaurs to predators was compensated by the number. We still see this in principle in sea turtles. They build clutches of up to 100 eggs each, but only a few survive from the entire clutch. The way of reproduction wasn't the only evolutionary advantage that contributed to their gigantic size. Another important point lies in the skeleton structure. Dinosaur skeletons had a feature that mammals don't have: a complex system of air sacs. These were special pockets made of animal tissues connected to the lungs. Usually, these sacs were attached to the bones in the neck, back, and hips. In some large dinosaurs, these pouches were even found inside the bones. They allowed the huge skeleton to hold its shape, while the bones themselves remained fairly light. These sacs also allowed the dinosaurs to grow in size without a proportional increase in strength and mass. But how do we know that extinct dinosaurs had such sacs? Partly because modern, non-extinct dinosaurs have them too. Wait a minute. What modern dinosaurs? Curious viewers have probably already guessed. Here they are. We are used to treating birds as something graceful, sublime, and heavenly. We don't see how they resemble reptiles that are so down to earth in every sense of the word. But there is a strong resemblance hiding in plain sight. Now, birds are direct descendants of dinosaurs, and they also have a similar system. For a flying bird, every gram of its mass is significant, and air sacs are just great for lightening the weight. When scientists compared the skeletons of birds and dinosaurs, they found identical places for attaching such bags. Studies of large dinosaur skeletons have also shown that there are such sacs inside some bones. But hollow bones aren't everything. In one study, scientists from the University of Massachusetts Amherst found that even the bone tissue itself in many dinosaurs had a structure that was designed to reduce weight. By examining the structure of the trabecular bone in dinosaurs, scientists found that its very design made it possible to have a lower bone density without sacrificing strength. But a good skeleton is still what allowed dinosaurs to grow to such sizes, but didn't facilitate growth. The question remains, what actually facilitated growth? The abundance of food sources have obviously played its part, but that wasn't the only factor. Indeed, during the heyday of the dinosaurs, the planet was an incredible oasis, teeming with life. But behind the thriving nature was an important factor: oxygen. There was more oxygen in those days than now. Metaphorically speaking, dinosaurs became so huge because the air they breathed was rich in oxygen. Such an unexpected conclusion was made by the American professor Morgan Schaller, from the Renaissance Institute in Troy. It would seem the subject of his studies is totally unrelated to giant reptiles. Specifically, he researched the levels of oxygen in the rocks of North America. We tested rocks from the Colorado Plateau and the Newark Basin that formed at the same time about 1,000 kilometers apart on the Pangaea supercontinent, the scientist says. Our results show that about 215 million years ago, over a period of just 3 million years, which is a very short term geologically speaking, the level of oxygen in the atmosphere jumped from 15 to 19%. Why this happened is still unclear, but the scientist noted that around the same time, dinosaurs began to grow dramatically in size. Professor of the University of Bristol, Michael Benton, commenting on this study, also pointed out the obvious dependence of a sharp jump in the dinosaur size on increased oxygen content. And if the oxygen hypothesis of dinosaur gigantism still causes a lot of debate, then this is beyond any doubt when it comes to the ancient giant insects. Modern insects cannot boast of large sizes, and the word insect itself is synonymous with something small, but it wasn't always so. In past geological epochs, some of the insects living on our planet were so big that modern ones could not even dream of such sizes. Even the flying insects were intimidatingly large, not to mention the crawling ones. The most striking example is the huge dragonflies, meganures. These were the largest flying insects that have ever lived on Earth. Outwardly, they were very similar to modern dragonflies, but had a wingspan of up to 70 centimeters. These giants reached their peak about 300 million years ago during the Carboniferous period, although they appeared on the planet at the beginning of the Paleozoic. For the first time, the fossil remains of meganure were found in France in 1880. According to paleontologists, both adult meganures and larvae were predators and ate other smaller insects. But why did giant dragonflies and huge centipedes thrive in the Carboniferous? Why did they become extinct in subsequent epochs, while other related species became much more modest in size? It's all about the increased level of oxygen in the atmosphere, as in the case of a sharp increase in the dinosaur size. Only when it comes to insects, this is the most direct consequence. The fact is, insects have a system of branching tubes, the trachea, that delivers oxygen to the organs and tissues. They are connected to holes, spiracles, on the surface of the body. In this way, insects are radically different from vertebrates that carry oxygen via blood cells. An insect cannot inhale, filling a whole bag with air, much as we do with the lungs. They just don't have lungs. The insect has to be content with the volume of air that naturally enters through the trachea, i.e., by gravity. Accordingly, the insect cannot begin to breathe faster or slower as needed. Using fluoroscopy, scientists measured the volume of the tracheal system in various species of beetles. It turned out that as the insect grows, the volume of its trachea increases 20% faster than its body weight. This feature of the respiratory system makes it impossible to increase the body size above a certain limit. Otherwise, at one point, the insect would have to turn into one continuous trachea. Calculations show that with such breathing mechanics, the biggest possible size for modern beetles is about 15 centimeters. This theoretical value coincides with the actual data. The largest modern beetles are about 15 centimeters long. They might be longer only in a few exceptional cases. And the greater the concentration of oxygen in the atmosphere, the higher the threshold for the maximum body size in insects. Therefore, insects in the past, when there was more than enough oxygen in the air, could evolve to such breathtaking sizes. everything is clear with the insects. And what, I wonder, is the size threshold for other animals? Is a real Godzilla or King Kong possible? Not everything is so simple with Godzilla, but as for King Kong, it simply cannot exist. King Kong, as shown in the movie, is probably not a physically viable organism, says Jonathan Payne, a paleobiologist at Stanford University. This scientist has done extensive research into how animal body sizes have changed throughout evolution. The main causes for this limitation are gravity and biomechanics. If you take a gorilla and simply double it in size, then its body wouldn't weigh twice as much, but would increase to the power of 3. This is just simple math. But the width of the body, and therefore that of the bones and muscles, would only increase by the power of 2. As the creature grows, it will need multiple times wider bones and more massive muscles just to keep the bones from cracking, not to mention the ability to walk. And you can forget the impressive jumps that King Kong does in the film. Can you even imagine an elephant jumping like a monkey? That's the same. Using thought experiments, scientists give very different estimates of the maximum size of a land animal. The fact is that this equation has too many variables, both external and internal. The level of oxygen in the atmosphere, gravity, way of reproduction, type of food and its availability, and presence of natural enemies are just a small part of these variables. This, in fact, explains why related species differ so much in size. The shrew and the capybara are both rodents, but a shrew weighs only 1 to 3 grams, while a capybara weighs 35 to 66 kilograms. There's no single reason for this. That's simply the way it is. Many agree that in each era, animals have reached the maximum that was possible, based on the combination of physiological and environmental factors. As for the theoretical limit, one can only guess here. We don't know what evolution will come up with in the next billion years. Or maybe the descendants of modern animals will have carbon fiber bones, like the characters in James Cameron's Avatar. Then the standards will completely change. But we are talking about land animals. In water, it's a whole different story. At least the influence of gravity is reduced by a lot. Strong bones are no longer needed, and marine animals take advantage of this fact. For example, sharks make do with mostly cartilage. In aquatic weightlessness, many other animals didn't even need such a cartilaginous, light skeleton. Cephalopods generally almost lack any solid body parts. At one of the stages of evolution, they even abandoned the shell. By relying on dexterity, adaptability, and intelligence, they also excelled in both species diversity and size. They succeeded so much that sailors have been afraid of them for many centuries, and the main characters of horror legends were by no means whales, which people had long learned to hunt. Something else instilled terror, namely giant squids and octopuses. There are plenty of engravings picturing something huge capturing a whole ship with its tentacles, pulling it to the bottom. The scientific community didn't believe in the existence of giant squids for a long time. They were considered nothing more than mythical creatures. This was like this until 1861, when a dramatic meeting at sea turned all ideas about giant mollusks upside down. The French corvette Alecton headed to Cayenne, passed near Tenerife, the largest and most populous island of the 7 Canary Islands. As the ship approached the island, the watchman on duty called out to the crew below. A large body, potentially submerged, floating on the surface. Captain Frédéric Bouget himself later described the monster as a giant squid. The captain decided to catch the monster and ordered sailors to fire muskets, launch harpoons, and try to catch the squid with a noose. Finally, the sailors managed to lasso the rope around the squid's body. However, it was too heavy, and the animal's body tore apart when trying to lift it on board. Only the tip of the tail remained on board, which weighed 14 kilograms according to the captain. This story even inspired the French writer Jules Verne. In 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, he described a similar encounter with a giant squid, but much less realistic. Today, we already know for sure that giant squids exist, and their size is really mind-blowing. The females can be up to 13 meters long, and the males up to 10 meters. This is based on well-documented data obtained from individuals. At the same time, there's a lot of evidence of specimens reaching and even exceeding 20 meters, but such cases haven't yet been documented. Now, the numbers alone may not impress you, but there's another example. All of you have seen a regular truck many times. It's 53 feet or 16 meters long. You can draw your own conclusions. The Santa Maria ship from the legendary expedition by Christopher Columbus was 26 meters long and 3.4 meters high. Of course, seeing something with tentacles half the size of one's flagship in the middle of the ocean would make even an experienced captain nervous. In addition to giant squids, their relatives, octopuses, often appeared in the legends about sea monsters. And there is more speculation here, since giant octopuses, although they also exist, are more modest in size. They virtually never reveal themselves to the sailors, lending an almost exclusively unobtrusive lifestyle deep in the sea. In marine folklore, they appeared simply because of tentacles as the most striking external resemblance. In fact, giant octopuses have an average arm span of up to 4 meters. It's extremely rare to come across individuals with an arm span of up to 6 meters. This is also very impressive, but still far from the size of giant squids. Looking at all these giants, dinosaurs, whales, sharks, huge mollusks, and even well-known elephants, it may seem they live with ease and comfort because of their size. As one fairy tale character said, "The life of a small creature is very dangerous." This is partially true. A mouse has many more enemies in the wild than an elephant or a whale, but giants have their own problems, and sometimes they become fatal for entire species. The supergiant ancient reptiles raise more questions. The physiology of dinosaurs, especially sauropods, is the subject of much debate in the scientific community. Unfortunately, we only have the fossilized skeleton parts at our disposal. We can figure out how the internal organs worked only using indirect signs, or simply speculate. This lack of information created a whole problem. The very existence of large dinosaurs and pterosaurs presents a partial scientific paradox. According to various estimates, the bones of large dinosaurs weren't strong enough to withstand the enormous weight of their bodies. The estimated muscle mass is clearly not enough for the monstrous reptiles to move properly. The circulatory system defies explanation, especially the heart, capable of pumping blood through such a gigantic organism. Heated disputes in the scientific community gave rise to a lot of theories, from the most conventional to the most exotic ones. For example, it's quite plausible that sauropods didn't have a single heart, but a whole system of hearts reaching the upper sections of the neck. The dubious ability of bones and muscles to resist gravity is explained by the fact that these giants spent most of their time in water bodies. There are some desperate theories suggesting that in those days, Earth had a much weaker gravity. Say the planet's rotation speed was much higher, and the centrifugal force partially compensated gravity. In any case, the huge size of sauropods at some point became almost an evolutionary limit for these animals. Their clumsiness and inability to react quickly made them vulnerable to predators. One could feed such a huge body only by consuming tons of vegetation per day. You don't even need to travel back in time. Take, for example, a giraffe. It's not unreasonably believed that a long neck is its weighty evolutionary advantage. After all, a giraffe can easily reach high branches. But the fact is that its neck turns into a terrible inconvenience when the giraffe decides to drink. Just look at the posture a poor animal has to take to quench its thirst. This is because its neck, although long, isn't particularly flexible. It has only 7 vertebrae, like most other mammals. Yes, and it is also difficult for it to eat. Those who haven't seen a giraffe firsthand often mistakenly believe that it resembles a horse with a long neck. In fact, the giraffe is huge. Males can be up to 6 meters high, and 1/3 is the neck. In some individuals, a short person can go under the giraffe's stomach without bending down. And this brings us back to the problem of blood supply. We could only guess how everything worked in sauropods, but everything is clear with giraffes. And the picture, I must say, is ambiguous. The giraffe's heart is huge and weighs about 12 kilograms. It pumps blood at a rate of 60 liters per minute, creating a pressure 3 times higher than in humans. The giraffe's blood is much thicker than ours. This all sounds pretty daunting in terms of potential strokes and other cardiovascular problems. But for now, the giraffes are well protected. Studies have shown that giraffes' FGFRL1 gene differs from a similar gene in other ruminants by as many as 7 amino acids. And these differences contribute to a much more stable cardiovascular system, and at the same time make the skeleton stronger. Perhaps sauropods had exactly the same life hack. However, the giraffe's survival in the long run largely depends on this rather thin genetic thread, and it might take a random mutation altering the FGFRL1 gene for cardiovascular and bone diseases to quickly erase giraffes from the planet's biosphere. Sadly, huge and beautiful animals in their gigantic beauty sometimes turn out to be very fragile in the face of the slightest environmental and physiological changes. The idea of being cruel to one's own offspring may seem strange to us as humans, who generally give the best of everything to our children. Nonetheless, it's quite common in animals. Brace yourself for what's coming, because it will leave you surprised, shocked, and even tearful. Today, you'll discover new facets of some well-known animals. We're unveiling our new compilation, The Worst Animal Parents. First on our list are animals whose mating period involves a lot of scratching, fighting, and just a whole lot of pain in general. These are the world's largest carnivorous marsupials, living in Australia, Tasmanian devils. Many know them from the Looney Tunes cartoon featuring the Tasmanian devil, Taz. In reality, they are stocky creatures with coarse brown or black fur and a tough demeanor. Their long front legs and shorter back legs give them an awkward gait. They can grow up to 76 centimeters, 30 inches in length, and weigh as much as 12 kilograms, 26 pounds. With their sharp teeth and powerful jaws, Tasmanian devils can deliver the most powerful bite relative to body mass among mammals. 14 kilograms, 30 pounds of force per square centimeter, 0.4 inches. That's even more than hyenas. A Tasmanian devil can crush its victim's spine or skull with just one bite. During the mating season, males and females have rather ludicrous battles. They behave extremely aggressively. They could be biting and scratching each other for days. Males try to prevent the females from leaving the den by biting and scratching. And if the male wants to leave, for instance to drink, he will have to take the female with him to ensure fidelity. Both female and male devils are not exactly monogamous. Tasmanian devils typically mate in March and are ready to give birth by April. Males can have up to 16 offspring in their 8-year lifetime, while females average up to 12. But why are Tasmanian devils on our list of the worst parents? You'll now find out why. The reason is that newborns are immediately faced with a real deadly battle. The female gives birth to 30 to 40 devil babies, but there are only 4 teats in her pouch. Therefore, only those who reach them first will survive. The rest will die. However, those that survive remain in the pouch until the end of winter. The mother devils treat them more kindly. Initially, they spend about 4 full months with her. Around August, she begins leaving them alone in the den, returning only to feed them. It's not unusual for her to carry the babies on her back rather than in her pouch. After 4 to 5 months in the den, when they've gained some weight, the young devils are evicted in December or January to become independent. That's the kind of Hunger Games they play from the very first day of life. So the next time your parents say something that makes your eyes roll, keep in mind that at least you're not one of the dozens of Tasmanian devil babies fighting for survival. Did we say Tasmanian devils are among the worst parents? But they're angels compared to pigs. Here's where things get really rough. Between 8 to 10% of piglets perish due to their sow mothers, either through accidental crushing or deliberate violence. What does this mean? Pigs practice cannibalism, eating their own offspring or that of other pigs. This behavior has been observed in both domestic pigs and wild boars, even under laboratory conditions, but it's especially common in sows. Of course, they don't always do this, but sometimes a pig attacks her piglets, biting their face, neck, and body so severely that they die. After that, she may eat their remains, but then she may also become ill. Why does a pig do this? Researchers point out several possible reasons. First, young, inexperienced mothers are more likely to harm their piglets compared to sows who have previously given birth. Only 1.22% of experienced sows killed one or more of their piglets, while such behavior was observed in 3.4% of young mother pigs. Second reason, aggression and cannibalism are more prevalent in environments housing only first-time mother pigs, as opposed to mixed age groups. Third, restless pigs more often attack their young. Additionally, during childbirth, frequent position changes can make it difficult for them to lie down without endangering the piglets. Fourth reason, exposure to noise and disturbances before farrowing increases the likelihood of aggression. Therefore, the less people interact with and disturb the sow, the less likely she is to attack her offspring. Fifth, confined spaces intensify aggression toward piglets. In a cramped pen, the sow is more likely to shove and bite. Sixth reason, maternal rage can be exacerbated by hormonal fluctuations. For example, sows with high levels of estradiol before and after farrowing may be aggressive. Stressed sows also have abnormally high, or conversely, insufficient levels of oxytocin. Seventh, overweight pigs, which often have more complicated farrowing experiences, are more prone to aggressive behavior. Finally, the eighth reason, sows exhibit more aggression in larger litters, especially those with a higher proportion of female piglets. Moreover, a sow often accidentally crushes her piglets. This usually happens when she has just become a mother and is experiencing severe stress. Considering that she weighs about 227 kilograms, 500 pounds, and a piglet just over 1.8 kilograms, 4 pounds, the weight difference is over 100 times. And shockingly, some sows consume their crushed piglets, which many scientists believe is an instinctual behavior to clean the pen. If you thought our previous examples were poor candidates for Mother of the Year award, wait till you hear about seals. It's true that seals exhibit intense maternal affection, but it's short-lived, lasting merely about 12 days. During this period, the mother seal devotes herself to feeding her young, often neglecting her own food. The mother ensures her baby's diet is rich enough for it to gain the necessary fat, with her milk being 50% fat. On such an enriched diet, newborn seal pups gain about 2 kilograms, 4.4 pounds per day. This totals to about 24 kilograms, 52.8 pounds over the feeding period. But once the milk ends, so does the mother's love. The exhausted female leaves, abandoning her offspring. You might think, like other animals, seal pups are ready for independent life by this point. But that's not the case. For the next month and a half, they remain alone on the ice, vulnerable and without food. This harsh existence causes the pup to lose half of its body weight. Unfortunately, it has no resources to regain it. At around 8 weeks, they are finally ready to swim and hunt on their own. But keep in mind, before reaching this milestone, they must survive hunger, avoid predators, and not drown in melting ice. The survival rate is bleak, with about 30% of seal pups perishing within their first year. However, weaning is not the only time when a mother seal might abandon her pup. In fact, something as seemingly benign as a selfie can lead to maternal abandonment. Marine mammal experts urge people not to touch or pick up seal pups found on beaches or coastlines. They're often resting there, or simply waiting for their hunting mothers. The problem is that adult seals may reject offspring that have interacted with humans. Therefore, it's advised not only to avoid touching the seal pups, but even to refrain from approaching them closely, as this could cost them their lives. Even if you think you can take a quick selfie and no one will see it, know that the mother might be watching from the waves. And if she sees you, or for example, your dog near her baby, she will most likely decide it's unsafe to return and abandon it. Without the mother, the seal pup has a slim chance of survival. Additionally, if you approach too closely, it may frighten the pup and alter its behavior. And pets, especially dogs, can injure it or be injured by adult seals. So keep in mind that your selfie may take only a few seconds, but it could doom the seal pup to a slow death from starvation. Now, let's look at how cute hamsters are. Those creatures are known for their wheel-running antics and endearing cheek-stuffing abilities. At first glance, you wouldn't think they share anything with pigs, but you might have already guessed what they have in common. Occasionally, these creatures eat their own offspring. This behavior may be observed directly or inferred from the mysterious disappearance of the young. And you might wonder, where are they? Alas, they have already been eaten by their own mother. Female hamsters begin preparations for their offspring by constructing a nest. They use tissues, paper towels, shredded paper, and bedding material from their cage. Sometimes they even store food inside or around the nest. The pregnancy lasts about 3 weeks, and then up to 20 babies appear in the cage overnight. If you didn't suspect your hamster was pregnant, this can be quite a surprise. One of the clues that she is expecting might be that the hamster starts eating more, although her diet remains the same. So, what drives a hamster who has meticulously prepared for her offspring to act so drastically? Firstly, it's about stress. Pregnancy, childbirth, feeding, and caring for several babies may overwhelm any animal and cause excessive stress. If the animal feels that caring for the offspring is more than it can handle, it will kill and eat its progeny. This is more common in young hamsters or those disturbed too much during the day. Secondly, fear may play a role. For instance, humans, other pets, or loud noises can prompt a mother hamster to consume her babies. Thirdly, scent. A mother hamster spends a lot of time cleaning and caring for her babies. She recognizes them by their scent. But if a baby has a new scent, like that of a human, the mother might get confused and not recognize it. Due to this change, she may kill and eat those she perceives as imposters. Another common reason is a lack of food. Any pregnant or nursing animal uses more energy than usual. Perhaps the hamster is simply hungry and fears she won't be able to provide for her offspring. Finally, the mother hamster might feel overwhelmed and incapable of caring for all the babies, especially if it's a large litter. She then eats part of the offspring. It doesn't seem merciful, but this is her way of trying to help the remaining ones survive. So, if you have hamsters, create a quiet and calm environment where your hamster can nest and care for her offspring. Check the babies, but don't touch them, at least in their first week of life, and provide the hamster with plenty of food. Pregnancy in hamsters causes stress, though it lasts less than a month. Imagine how overwhelming an 11-month pregnancy might be, specifically lasting 340 days. That's the case with horses. Only women who have been pregnant can appreciate how long that really is. Mares exhibit unique behavior during pregnancy. Upon conception, they start mingling with every stallion in the herd and mating with each one. This might seem illogical, since the evolutionary goal has already been achieved. However, it's more complicated than it seems. Stallions are aggressive toward foals that aren't theirs because they dislike conception. They can fatally injure a baby. But if they believe the foal is theirs, they are much likelier not to harm it. So by acting in this unusual way, the mother horse throws male horses off the track and protects her offspring. But why are stallions so radical? It's important to understand that a stallion's reproductive success is due to his strong genes. By becoming a father, he acts, to some extent, against his own interests, as he spends a lot of time guarding his mares from potential threats. In other words, it's crucial for a stallion to be certain that the offspring he's raising is his own. Now, imagine if he ends up raising someone else's foals. In other words, he's simply spending time and energy protecting those who don't carry his genes and will become his future competitors. That's why stallions have developed such a drastic strategy against competitors' young. But what if a mare can't mate with other stallions when the time comes? She has a plan B for that. She can terminate the pregnancy because she senses that the foal would potentially be in danger. Scientists aren't exactly sure how this happens. It might be the result of a chemical process. However, there are rare instances when a mare rejects her newborn. She may walk away from it, ignore it, deny it milk, or in extreme cases, kick, bite, or even kill it. This behavior is observed in first-time mothers, those separated from their newborns due to illness or injury, or those who have previously rejected their foals for some reason. It's crucial for the mare to feed the foal with her milk during the first few hours after birth. as her colostrum contains antibodies essential for the young's health in the first weeks of life. To facilitate feeding, a mare might be placed behind barriers to prevent kicking. Farmers would distract her with grain or give her mild tranquilizers to reduce aggression. Now, let's move on to some formidable-looking parents, the hippos. Typically, female hippos give birth to one calf every 2 years. The calves can swim from birth and weigh between 25 to 54 kilograms, 55 to 119 pounds. But of course, hippo mothers still diligently protect them. Female hippos usually isolate themselves from the herd to give birth, then slowly reintroduce their calf to the herd when they feel ready. Collectively, the herd can better protect the calves from crocodiles, hyenas, or lions. It usually consists of 10 to 15 individuals. However, sometimes living in a herd leads to unexpected tragedies, like the one that took place in Hwange National Park in Zimbabwe. There, a mother hippo was feeding her 2-day-old calf away from the herd. A tragedy struck when she decided to introduce him to the others. We're now giving a viewer discretion warning for the more sensitive viewers, as the following content might be particularly disturbing. When you think of hippos, you might picture these massive animals with cute ear tips and bulging eyes, lazily lounging in the water. But sometimes they commit infanticide. This is believed to occur due to overcrowding and disease. It can also happen when adult males perceive male calves as a threat to their dominance. In Hwange Park, the mother didn't keep her 2-day-old calf away, and it got too close to the herd. Then, without any apparent reason, the mother started to back away. Several adult individuals cornered her on one side of the waterhole, while about 7 others approached the calf. Before the witnesses could react, the adult hippos attacked the calf and tore it apart. Its remains were snatched up by a crocodile. This wild scene traumatized even seasoned wildlife enthusiasts. More often, hippos are so protective of their offspring that they attack people who come too close to their water bodies or drive other hippos out of the herd. Another dangerous period for hippo calves is the mating season. During this time, males actively compete for female attention. Preoccupied with their calves, female hippos often reject males, which can provoke them to target the calves to get to their mothers. They have no trouble catching up to the young and injuring them. Of course, the mother hippo will do everything possible to protect her calf, but she is often powerless in these situations. However, in rare cases, the female can successfully defend her offspring. What do you think of these persistent suitors? Now, let's turn our attention to land. Imagine how you would feel if your mother stopped caring for you when you were a child and gave all her attention to your brother or sister just because they were stronger. It's precisely this type of behavior that earned adorable pandas a spot on our worst animal parent list. Pandas often give birth to twins, and their offspring are born tiny, weighing approximately 85 to 140 grams, about 3 to 5 ounces. This is about 0.07% of the mother's weight, making them the smallest newborns relative to their mothers among all mammals. An adult panda is at least 700 times heavier than its newborn. To put this into perspective, human mothers are usually 20 times heavier than their newborns, and orcas are about 50 times heavier. Marsupials are the only mammals with smaller newborns, and that's because their offspring continue developing in their mother's pouch. For instance, a newborn red kangaroo weighs about 0.00001% of its mother's weight. But let's get back to panda cubs. Researchers aren't exactly sure why they are born so tiny and have underdeveloped skeletons. Pandas' short gestation period of just 1 month is likely related to their nutrient-low bamboo diet. Instead of expending a huge amount of energy on growing the fetus, female pandas focus on producing fatty milk to nourish their babies. Newborn pandas are extremely tiny and can hardly move, let alone defend themselves. Moreover, they look nothing like what you might expect. They are born pink, wrinkled, and hairless. Moreover, they have no black and white patches. It's only within the first 48 hours after birth that their skin begins to grow white fur, followed by black markings around the eyes and across the body. They are fully furred by about 3 weeks. Why did we give all those details? To help you understand what it's like to care for such a helpless being, even just one. We're not excusing pandas, but these mothers spend 80% of their time holding their cubs. They constantly press them to their bodies to aid feeding and stimulate their bodily functions. For the first 3 months after giving birth, they do almost nothing but care for their babies. During this period, a mother's life revolves solely around her cubs, and she often forgoes food and water. So, while their babies gain weight, their mothers starve. The challenge arises when a panda mother, particularly a young and inexperienced one, is faced with raising 2 cubs at once. So when one becomes stronger, they shift all their attention to it, neglecting the weaker one. In managed environments like national parks, staff employ techniques like periodically swapping the cubs to ensure that both of them receive maternal care and nourishment. So why do pandas behave in such a seemingly irresponsible way? Because they don't want to risk their own lives or the lives of their offspring and choose the one more likely to survive. This is the harsh reality. Now, let's look up at the sky and focus on the avian world above us. When you think of the worst bird mother, you'll probably think of the cuckoo. This bird has rightly earned such a reputation. Cuckoos delegate their parental duties to others. How? The bird secretly lays its eggs in the nests of other species, which then raise the cuckoo chicks alongside their own. This behavior is known as brood parasitism. Moreover, the cuckoo eats or pushes an egg out of the host nest to make room for its own. Then the parent bird exerts tremendous efforts in raising the chicks, including the imposter. Meanwhile, the cuckoo can live a carefree life, relieved of its parental duties. While this strategy may seem advantageous, only about 1% of birds in nature engage in such behavior. And what about the foster children? Do they live in clover? Not really. When a cuckoo chick grows up, they may face an identity crisis. For instance, how would you know who you are if your adoptive parents, brothers, and sisters were crows? And would you be able to make the same sounds as your new family? Chicks learn singing, feeding, social behavior, and migration routes from their parents. These skills aren't innate and can't be acquired from foster parents. Thus, cuckoo chicks have to adapt. Now imagine a cuckoo was raised by crows, choosing a crow as a mate, assuming the latter agrees. Their union can't produce offspring or hybrids. Interestingly, cuckoos only mate with other cuckoos, which suggests that they know their true identity. However, the cuckoo chick is in danger even at the stage of an egg. The host bird of the nest can recognize the imposter and simply throw the foreign egg out. To minimize this risk, cuckoos have evolved to lay eggs that closely mimic those of the host bird. Interestingly, the male has no influence on their color. He doesn't know which nest the female would choose for her egg. So evolution ensured that all the camouflage depends on the female. For example, the pale blue cuckoo eggs are almost identical to those of the redstart, in whose nests they are laid. However, there are curious exceptions. With dunnocks, cuckoos seem not to bother at all. They lay white, brown speckled eggs among blue ones and still go unnoticed. Do you think the cuckoo's mischief ends there? Not at all. After choosing a nest, the bird observes it for a while to precisely time the laying of eggs. If she does it too early, the chicks will hatch prematurely. And if she does it too late, the cuckoo may resort to drastic measures, like destroying the host's entire clutch to introduce a new brood. Actually, a cuckoo can lay up to 50 eggs in different nests. Remarkably, just 2 weeks after feathering, her chicks can become twice as large as their foster mother. Indeed, cuckoos specialize in smaller birds. Our next subject shows us that birds can behave even more harshly. Human mothers with more than one child often intervene to stop fights or conflicts between their children. However, in the avian world, the response to sibling rivalry may be so drastically different that we would hardly consider it normal. This is the case with black eagles. The principle of survival of the fittest strongly applies to these birds. We're used to the idea of interspecies competition in the animal kingdom, but intraspecies competition exists too, for limited resources, and consequently, survival and the chance to reproduce. The Verreaux's eagle is a prime example. These birds inhabit the mountains of northeastern Africa and the Middle East. They are almost entirely black, except for their yellow legs and beak. Adult individuals can reach over 60 centimeters, 2 feet in length, with a wingspan ranging from 150 to 180 centimeters, about 5 to 6 feet. Their diet includes small mammals such as squirrels and bats, as well as their fellow avians. Sometimes this includes an entire nest of eggs and chicks. Why did they end up on our list of worst parents? Verreaux's eagles lay only 2 eggs annually in their nest, usually situated on a ledge. The hatching of the first chick typically means death for the second, as the older sibling will start attacking the younger one with the mother's tacit approval. Numerous recorded observations show instances of older chicks pecking their siblings over 1,000 times within the first 3 days of life. Now imagine this level of aggression. In a study of 200 Verreaux's eagle nests, only 1 case was found where both chicks survived. This bird behavior has evolved due to the limited space in the nest and the scarcity of food. And what about the parents? Faced with limited resources, they allow such behavior because they know not all chicks will survive anyway. It also saves their energy by reducing the number of mouths to feed. Moreover, after the death of the second chick, the eagle and elder chick may eat its remains. What a harsh school of life. The younger chick is doomed from the start. The female Verreaux's eagle begins incubating her first egg immediately, laying the second one only 3 to 4 days later. Consequently, the first chick hatches several days before the second and gains strength before its rival's arrival, ready for the inevitable confrontation. Thus, such fratricide and sororicide occur among large birds with complex hunting behavior, extended learning periods in early life, long lifespans, and low reproductive rates. These birds typically care for their chicks over extended periods, and the chicks are equipped with a potent natural weapon from a young age, a sharp beak. For example, an African Verreaux's eagle chick does not fully feather for 95 days or longer. You might ask, why lay 2 eggs if only 1 chick will survive anyway? The second egg serves as guarantee for the mother should anything happen to the first one. Now, let's dive into the ocean depths to look at those who can view the tragic fate of their offspring with cold blood. Our first marine creatures to explore are the sharks. We're used to thinking of sharks as bloodthirsty predators. As it turns out, they are not any gentler with their own young. And it's not surprising. given that they once faced a serious trial of intrauterine cannibalism. There are two types of this phenomenon in sharks. The first is oophagy, which means egg consumption. A pregnant female shark continues to lay eggs long after mating to support her future offspring. How come? She feeds them these eggs, which are consumed by the developing embryos. But let's try to defend the shark here. This isn't exactly cannibalism, as the eggs are unfertilized. Does the horror end there? Actually, it has barely even started, because we'll now move on to the second type of cannibalism, embryophagy. This phenomenon was discovered by biologist Stuart Springer in 1948. Here's what he found. A female shark can carry up to 20 embryos, 10 in each of her 2 uteri. Imagine that. Some shark species have 2 uteri. However, they give birth to just 2 live offspring, 1 from each uterus. Embryos hatch within the first uterus at about 5 to 6 centimeters, 2 to 2.4 inches long. By then, they are armed with sharp teeth and know how to use them. But only when they reach about 10 centimeters, approximately 4 inches, do they begin hunting, consuming not only unfertilized eggs, but also unhatched shark pups and smaller, weaker embryos. The most intense stage occurs when an embryo reaches 23 to 34 centimeters, 9 to 13 inches, at which point it eliminates all competitors, its potential brothers and sisters. Consequently, only the strongest, most aggressive pups survive the 9 to 12 months in the mother's womb. Genes play a significant role here. Shark embryos come from different fathers. In 60% of cases, the surviving offspring are full siblings from the same father. Therefore, competition and natural selection occur even after fertilization. Interestingly, embryos have another talent. Studies have shown that they can swim from one uterus to the other, destroying their rivals from other fathers wherever they may be. Now, is this a womb or a fight club? What's the result of such behavior? Shark pups are born larger than if they had shared the space with other embryos. Thanks to a rich diet, they are also heavier and have a crucial competitive advantage. They know how to hunt and consume prey. Thus, offspring come from only the strongest males. But the struggle doesn't end at birth. It's encoded in shark DNA to survive at all costs. Therefore, shark pups may still consume their weaker siblings. What's even worse, even the mother shark might eat her own offspring. For instance, this might happen in cases of limited resources. It's no wonder that after such a brutal start in life, sharks continue to prey on each other even in adulthood. Now, let's turn our attention to the next subjects, dolphins. These are known as particularly friendly creatures, so it's hard to believe they might be hiding some dark secret. However, they too have their dubious aspects. They don't always act like Flipper, the miraculous dolphin who befriends and rescues humans in the eponymous TV series. In fact, they might behave very differently. Off the coast of Scotland, a scientist shockingly observed for nearly an hour as an adult dolphin repeatedly grabbed a calf in its mouth and slammed it against the water until it disappeared from view. In a separate study off the coast of Virginia, researchers found 9 deceased dolphin calves with severe injuries, including broken ribs, skulls, and spines. One of the bodies bore bite marks consistent with those of an adult dolphin. Finally, a research team from Japan witnessed the enigmatic behavior behind these incidents. It all happened in Matsu Bay in Japan. Drawn by distant splashing, the researchers discovered about 10 dolphins, 4 of whom, including at least one male, were targeting a calf. These attackers rammed it with their heads and tossed it into the air. The dolphins frequently cornered and pushed the calf down, seemingly trying to drown it. The young dolphin had visible bite marks. After 54 minutes of this coordinated attack, another group arrived, not to rescue the victim, but to take over the attack. As you remember, we warned you that this video contains some shocking content. The first group retreated, and the second attacked even more aggressively. This could mean that the second group was dominant, or that the first one was tired. In just 75 minutes, the baby dolphin received 115 blows. Amid this chaos, one dolphin, presumably the mother, tirelessly attempted to keep the calf afloat and chase off the attackers. Scientists don't know how it ended, but we hope for the best. Why do dolphins do this? These mammals give birth only once every 2 to 4 years, and their offspring remain dependent on their mothers for a considerable period. This can create tension among males. It's no coincidence that half of the attackers are male. Therefore, a male may kill a non-related or even his own calf to end the mother dolphin's lactation period. This makes her ready to mate again. In the case of Matsubei, the situation was exacerbated by the fact that the female and the calf were alone. Normally, female dolphins travel in groups with their offspring. As a result, the aggressively inclined dolphins had an opportunity to attack. Also, female dolphins sometimes behave like horses. We don't mean to say they neigh and stomp their hooves, but they have a similar mating strategy. They mate with many males from different groups, so none know who the father of the calf is. This reduces the likelihood of the calf being killed. So remember the dolphin's smile and know that it does not always signify friendliness. Today, you will learn what animals we have lost, who is responsible for their extinction, and most importantly, what we have already managed to revive and why we need it. Extinct animals that may come back from the dead. Welcome to Australia, home to emus, kangaroos, and koalas. A long time ago, it was also home to thylacines, or Tasmanian tigers. But about 3,600 to 3,200 years ago, these marsupial mammals were no longer to be found, neither in mainland Australia nor in New Guinea. There is a version that they were exterminated in these areas by dingoes, so the only refuge for Tasmanian tigers became the island of Tasmania. But the animals had a sad fate there as well. Who pursued the predators and finally exterminated them? And why did mankind want to resurrect the thylacines? Let's start with its unusual appearance. The thylacine had a body like that of a wolf, a head like that of a fox, stripes on its body like a tiger, and a pouch on its belly like a kangaroo. It had a long, thin tail that helped it keep its balance and move quickly and silently. Its powerful hind legs enabled it to jump long distances and hunt its prey. Usually, it was small mammals and birds. According to other sources, lizards, frogs, and even fish. But people regarded the Tasmanian tiger as an exterminator of livestock and poultry and organized a real hunt for it. The government of Tasmania also declared war on the predator. So, from 1888 to 1909, they paid £1 sterling for the hide of an adult and 10 shillings for a cub of the predator. A plague-like disease, competition for food with dingo dogs, and the reclamation of Tasmanian lands by colonists all led to the fact that by the late 1920s, there were virtually no thylacines left in the world. In 1936, the last known thylacine died at Hobart Zoo. So, Tasmania lost its main predator. Farmers may have breathed a sigh of relief, but nature didn't like it. thylacines ate sick animals and kept diseases from spreading through populations. They also hunted smaller marsupials such as wallabies and Tasmanian pedemelons, and thus regulated their numbers. Without this predator in Tasmania, rodents and birds increased in number and vegetation decreased. In recent decades, Australia has suffered from devastating droughts and fires. Some scientists believe that the process can be slowed down or even stopped if the marsupial wolf is returned to Tasmania's ecosystem. This bold project has already been undertaken by Colossal Biosciences in collaboration with the University of Melbourne and the Tiger Research Centre. There is already a coherent plan to recover the thylacine. A perfectly preserved museum tissue sample has been found to recreate the complete thylacine genome. A close relative of the Tasmanian tiger, the fat-tailed dunnart, has also been identified. Its genome will be used and modified to maximize its similarity to the genome of the extinct animal. In addition to working with the genome, scientists have spent the last few years developing an artificial womb to turn a future embryo into a fetus, and an artificial pouch to grow a cub in. Scientists anticipate that the whole process, along with research and preparatory work, will take no more than 10 years. But not all researchers are so optimistic. Part of the scientific community believes that by editing the genome of dunnart, it is not possible to replace all its parts with the genome of thylacine. Therefore, it will be a hybrid in any case. According to some doubtful scientists, it will be imperfect, may have health problems, and when released into the wild, there will be harm instead of benefit to the ecosystem. Only time will reveal who was right and who was wrong. And yet, there is hope. Now, let's move to North America. It's hard to believe, but just a couple of centuries ago, there were countless flocks of passenger pigeons here. The birds were constantly migrating across the continent in search of food and nesting sites. Measuring about 40 centimeters, 15 inches in length, the pigeon could reach speeds of up to 100 kilometers, 62 miles per hour, and was graceful and agile. With 3 to 5 billion individuals, it was one of the most widespread birds on the earth in the 18th and early 19th centuries. But by the end of the 19th century, this feathered tribe had rapidly disappeared. No, the extinction of the passenger pigeon is not mystic. Everything is much simpler. The fate of this species was decided by mankind. The point is that there were so many passenger pigeons that people exterminated them on an uncontrolled industrial scale. They were hunted for fun, and then merchants began selling pigeon meat. The price per bird carcass was ridiculous, from 31 to 56 cents per dozen. In the state of Michigan alone, about 1 billion of these birds were exterminated in 1879. In addition, people were actively cutting down forests, destroying the habitat of this species. All this led to the fact that by 1900, not a single passenger pigeon remained in the wild. The last individual, named Martha, died in 1914 in the Cincinnati Zoo, USA. However, some scientists believe that humans alone could not have exterminated billions of birds so quickly. In their opinion, the overly social lifestyle of this bird also contributed to the extinction. While some scientists dispute why exactly passenger pigeons became extinct, others undertake efforts to resurrect them. And it's not a frivolous scientific interest. Researchers have found that these birds were true engineers of the forest ecosystem. They helped spread plant seeds and regulated insect populations. For the modern ecosystem, the return of passenger pigeons would be a great gift. They are the most important species for the future conservation of forest biodiversity in Eastern America, according to Ben J. Novak, the scientist who decided to bring back the passenger pigeon through genetic engineering. Revive and Restore's project plan is to insert the passenger pigeon's DNA into the genome of the band-tailed pigeon, which is the closest species to the extinct bird. And then we have to wait for the embedded gene to manifest itself in the bird after a certain number of generations. And then we could celebrate the birth of Patagionis neoectopistes, the new passenger pigeon of America. But so far, this is a distant possibility. Currently, the scientist is breeding the first birds to receive the Cas9 gene, an essential element of the CRISPR genome editing technology. Novak's team needs 22 pairs of birds for breeding. Next, the work of introducing the traits of the passenger pigeon will start. The group of scientists believe that this particular bird has a much better chance of rising from the ashes than any other extinct feathered species. Museums and collections of taxidermists have preserved many stuffed pigeons, which for sure contain usable DNA. In addition, there are band-tailed pigeons, the closest living relatives of the passenger pigeon, available to scientists. If everything works out, in about 15 to 20 years, we might witness the revival of the passenger pigeon. Australia, North America. Now let's head to Africa. On the continent where the hot sun scorches the earth, there once roamed a zebra that differed from the others. It was the quagga, a graceful creature whose name means striped horse in the Hottentot language. Quaggas had a coloring unique among equines. They looked like zebras in the front and like horses in the back. These animals used to roam along the Orange River in huge herds, but after the arrival of Europeans in South Africa, quagga numbers began to decline rapidly. People mercilessly killed the wild animals for their hides and meat. All this led to the quagga becoming extinct in the wild by 1878, and the last individual died in the Amsterdam Zoo in 1883. For a long time, scientists attributed quaggas to the horse family, but Reinhold Rau, a naturalist from the South African Museum, managed to convince the entire scientific community that the quagga was a subpopulation of the plains zebra. He sent samples of dried quagga muscle to the University of Berkeley, California for research. In 1984, DNA was extracted from the dried quagga muscle. The quagga was the first extinct animal to have DNA extracted from its body. Analysis of this DNA and further research led to the conclusion that the quagga was a subspecies of zebra, not a horse. Rau had been waiting for this information more than anyone else. And so, in 1987, Project Quagga was born, with the goal of returning to the wild an animal that had become extinct 100 years ago. Rau traveled to national parks to pick zebras with colors as close to quagga as possible. 19 zebras with fewer stripes on the back of their bodies were selected for the project. Based on this population, 9 animals were bred through selective breeding to become the progenitors of the new quagga. The first foal was born at the end of 1988, and the second generation came into being in 1997. By 2004, there were 11 breeding centers, and new quaggas already numbered 83. Rau's work continued even after his death. In 2017, the number of new quaggas reached 142, and now it's about the 5th or 6th generation of offspring. The newly bred zebra subspecies, despite the external similarities, is different from its historical predecessors, and therefore was named Rau quagga. Project enthusiasts believe that soon they will be able to release a herd of Rau quaggas into the wild, and mankind will not let this species become extinct again. Well, let's move on from zebras to larger animals, the giants that roamed the steppes of Europe, Asia, and North Africa thousands of years ago. These were aurochs, bulky animals with huge horns and thick black-brown fur. These giants reached 180 centimeters, 6 feet at the withers, and weighed up to 1.5 tons. But someday, they disappeared completely. And once again, it was due to human intervention. The horns of aurochs were coveted hunting trophies. People would drink spirits from them, use them as signal horns and decorations. Hunters who got the hide or horns of an auroch were respected. Only the bravest, strongest, and most skillful could take down this huge, ferocious animal. Julius Caesar himself wrote about the aurochs in his book. Their strength and speed are extraordinary. They spare neither men nor wild animals they spot. Unregulated hunting of the aurochs led to the fact that by the 13th century AD, they remained in small numbers only in Eastern Europe. By 1400, aurochs could be found only in inaccessible forests in today's Poland, Belarus, and Lithuania. People already realized that there were few aurochs left, so these animals were kept in royal lands and under guard. The last known herd of aurochs settled in Poland's Jaktorowska forest near Warsaw. Of the 50 individuals, only 4 remained by 1601. It is believed that the last female auroch died in 1627. But there is a version that the aurochs lived up to the 17th to 18th centuries in Bulgaria. This is confirmed by a find discovered in the center of Sofia on the site of the ancient Serdica fortress. In 2020, remains were found there that could have belonged to aurochs, according to Balkan scientists. The first attempt to recover the aurochs was made in Germany in the 1920s and 1930s. The important mission was entrusted to 2 brothers, Heinz and Lutz Heck. The brothers decided to recreate the extinct animals by reverse breeding. They selected cattle with maximum similarity to the aurochs in shape of horns, color, and behavior, and they merged them into one tribe to produce offspring that resembled the extinct aurochs. The experiments resulted in a new breed of cattle called the Heck cattle. These were tall animals with large horns and an aggressive nature. Encouraged by their success, the brothers rushed to spread the new species across the country, from Munich Zoo to the forest on the present-day border between Poland and Russia. However, the project was met with heavy criticism. Many scientists, having studied the bred Heck cattle, came to the conclusion that the species had nothing to do with the extinct aurochs. The Heck bull was 20 to 30 centimeters, 8 to 12 inches shorter than the aurochs, with shorter legs and a much longer torso. Aurochs had an athletic build, which was not the case with Heck cattle. The horns of Heck cattle also lacked the shape, length, and diameter of the original. Overall, Heck cattle looked more like domestic breeds of cattle, but not like the auroch. But the attempts to bring back the extinct animal did not end there. In 1996, German biologists began crossbreeding Heck cattle with Southern European breeds of cattle in the hope of surpassing the results of the Heck brothers. The resulting hybrid breed became known as Taurus. They were really taller than the Heck cattle and had long legs and a slender body. Nowadays, Taurus bulls are bred in Germany, Denmark, Hungary, and Latvia. In 2008, a program aimed at recovering aurochs was launched in the Netherlands. It was called Toros, thus differing by literally 1 letter from the previous project. 5 years later, the Germans launched the RYV project. Today, it has 5 breeding herds in Germany. Both organizations conduct joint research and sometimes exchange breeding stock. Klaus Kropp, an experienced archaeologist and head of the RYV project, is confident of the project's success. The 3rd generation of bred animals is very similar to its ancestors. The largest of the bulls is over 180 centimeters, 6 feet tall, and weighs almost a ton, over 2,200 pounds. But the most striking thing is the character of the animals. In 2022, a film crew caught an amazing scene on the coast of Croatia. A herd of toros had been released here just a bit earlier. The bulls stood in a semicircle, protecting the cows, calves, and wild horses hiding behind them from a pack of wolves. A number of researchers claim that this is how ancient aurochs would react to external danger, and other animals would take cover from enemies by hiding inside the semicircle. But what about the DNA of the aurochs? Is no one trying to recreate an exact copy of the extinct giant? Well, there are efforts to do so. The Polish Association for the Reproduction of Aurochs is going to use aurochs DNA taken from the bones or teeth of an animal and clone aurochs. The hardest part is to get an accurate picture of the aurochs DNA, and then the genetic material will be implanted into a surrogate mom, such as a regular cow. And with a bit of luck, an auroch almost identical to the original may be born. Time will show whether Polish scientists will be able to go through all the stages and present to the world an exact clone of the ancient auroch. Aren't scientists going to resurrect an animal bigger than the auroch? How about a woolly mammoth? Thousands of years ago, this giant roamed the vast expanse of ice and snow-covered tundra in search of vegetation. The massive body was covered with thick red-brown fur, and long curved tusks like sabers were ready to repel an enemy attack anytime. Male mammoths could reach almost 3.5 meters, 11.5 feet in shoulders, and weigh more than 8 tons. Imagine, one mammoth weighed as much as a whole school bus. Mammoths lived in the Mammoth Steppe, which stretched from modern-day Spain to Canada and from the Arctic islands to China. But the mammoth story had a sad ending. More than 10,000 years ago, these giants completely disappeared from our planet. Scientists are still not sure about the reasons for their extinction. Some blame climate change. Others attribute it to hunters. Maybe it was a combination of factors that played a fatal role. Today, thousands of years later, mammoths still haunt scientists' minds. Geneticists dream of reviving these giants. And it is not only about scientific interests, but also about an important ecological mission. According to some scientists, mammoths can help stop global warming. But this would be possible if pastures appeared in the Arctic. Dense vegetation, along with lots of large animals, could slow global warming. But how does it all work? Permafrost is now actively melting in the Arctic. In winter, a thick snow layer covers the soil and prevents it from deep freezing. If grasslands appear here, animals will actively trample the snow in search of food. There will be less snow, which means that the soil under the vegetation will freeze more. In addition, dense vegetation will help absorb greenhouse gases from the atmosphere. The grass is also much lighter than shrubs and deciduous forests. This means that a lighter surface will reflect more solar energy back into space, helping to maintain cooler air temperatures. A grassland ecosystem will even help make the soils in the Arctic drier. Currently, the soil here is overwatered, and there are many bogs due to vegetation with low photosynthesis rates. Highly productive grasses will quickly dry out the soils through photosynthesis. And in dry conditions, if there is access to oxygen, organics decompose into carbon dioxide, not methane, whose greenhouse effect is 23 times greater. Scientists are now actively working to restore vegetation. Environmentalists Nikita and Sergei Zimov are trying to bring meadows and steppes back to the north of Yakutia in Russia. There, they have created their own mini mammoth steppe, the Pleistocene Park. Once the meadows and grasslands cover the Arctic again, Only one small thing will be missing: repopulating them with mammoths. And Colossal Biosciences Company, together with one of its founders, geneticist George Church, can help. The plan is to create a living hybrid of elephant and mammoth, which would resemble its extinct ancestor like two peas in a pod. Today, scientists have already created a set of modified cells known as induced pluripotent stem cells, or iPSCs. DNA from an Asian elephant was used to create them. In the near future, scientists hope that any tissue of the mammoth's body can be created from these cells. For example, a thick fur, a layer of insulating fat, or ears smaller than those of an elephant. Colossal Biosciences researchers have already analyzed the genomes of 53 woolly mammoths based on ancient DNA and identified those genes that make the mammoth unique. Next up, the scientists will work on growing the embryo and implanting it in an elephant surrogate mother. The company's laboratories in Dallas, USA are working on creating an artificial uterus for the growing baby woolly mammoths. Colossal Biosciences claims that the first hairy elephant calf in 10,000 years will appear on Earth by 2028. Although a renowned biotechnology company doesn't know when the dodo, a bird that became extinct more than 350 years ago, will reappear, it is already working to bring it back, along with thylacines and mammoths. The story of the dodo is a sad example of human impact on the extinction of an entire species, when it took less than 100 years from the first mention of the unusual bird to its being recognized as extinct. In 1598, Dutch sailors alerted the world about a flightless bird with a strange beak from the island of Mauritius. The dodo was the size of a turkey, had short legs, and a bulging, impressive beak. The bird really couldn't fly, but there were no predators on the Paradise Island, and it had nothing to fear until the 16th century, when people arrived in Mauritius. Fascinated by the bizarre bird, they began catching it for zoos and museums. Sailors used the exotic dodo meat as food. In addition, the dodos began to suffer from rats, dogs, and cats brought to the island by man. The defenseless feathered creature could resist neither man nor predators. By 1700, the dodo was completely exterminated. And in 2023, Colossal Biosciences first announced plans to bring the dodo back to life. A big step in the process came courtesy of Beth Shapiro, an ancient DNA specialist at the University of California, Santa Cruz. Shapiro and her colleagues were able to reconstruct the entire dodo genome from the remains of a 500-year-old bird from a Danish museum. The next step is to compare the obtained genetic information with the dodo's closest relative, the Nicobar pigeon, to further modify the pigeon cells to those of the extinct bird. Further, there is fine work to make changes in the primary reproductive cells of pigeons, growing the edited egg cell, and finally transferring its genome into an unfertilized egg. The surrogate mother for carrying the dodo will be a domestic hen. If everything works out, the hen will soon lay an egg from which the dodo 2.0 will hatch. It will not be a real dodo, but it will look very similar to its extinct ancestor. Scientists have yet to master the genetic editing of birds, which is still in its infancy compared to the genetic engineering of mammals. But there is a significant upside. It is easier to work with bird genes than with mammals. This means that revived dodos may appear before mammoths and thylacines. Alongside the work of the Colossal Biosciences team, the Mauritius Wildlife Foundation, MWF, is searching for a sustainable habitat for the dodo 2.0. The problem is that Mauritius has changed a lot over the centuries. It now has a lot of sugarcane plantations, buildings, and water reservoirs. 3 places are being considered for the settlement of the revived dodos: Black River Gorges National Park, as well as the neighboring reserves of Round Island and Isle aux Aigrettes. The islands are preferred as there are no natural predators. If dodos are to be settled on the mainland, invasive species such as rats, wild cats, pigs and dogs, monkeys, mongooses, and crows would need to be controlled or even relocated to keep the valuable birds safe. However, in the case of settlement on the islands, the dodos will be socially isolated because both islands are uninhabited, and the director of the foundation wishes that people could come and see the dodos. In any case, the experience of biologist Arkat Abzhanov and paleontologist Bart-Anjan Boulard may be useful to the creators of Dodo version 2.0. In 2015, these American scientists managed to grow chicken embryos with a reptilian snout instead of the usual bird beak. They aimed to understand the process of transformation of snouts into beaks in reptiles at the molecular level. A little reminder here: birds are known to be descendants of dinosaurs. It was not easy. Scientists analyzed the embryonic development of the beak in chickens and emus, and also studied the snouts of alligators, lizards, and turtles. The researchers concluded that the development from the premaxilla bone of dinosaur snouts occurred in the same way as in reptiles. But then evolution stepped in, and the twin bones lengthened and joined together to form a beak. The research team undertook a daring experiment. They had to turn back time and make the bird's facial bones develop differently at the embryonic level. They found that specific proteins determine whether an embryo develops a reptile's snout or a bird's beak. The only difference is the growth centers in which they will be located. In reptiles, this zone is located on the right and left sides of the snout, and in birds, in the same place but right in the middle. Using sophisticated operations at the molecular level, scientists managed to block the middle zone without affecting the lateral ones. Then, it was necessary to bring the embryo to the late stages of development. The thing is that the head skeleton takes its final shape just a few days before hatching. The results amazed the scientists. On digital models of the skulls of mutant chickens, it is clearly visible that some chickens got skulls that resemble not the present-day birds, but the famous Archaeopteryx, an ancient transformational form between dinosaurs and birds. Even signs of similarity to some dinosaurs were observed. But it is too early to claim the emergence of a mechanism that allows the creation of birds from reptiles and vice versa. We need to explore the genetic mechanism of beak formation more thoroughly. Chicks with an unusual appearance never hatched. This point was not part of the research protocol. It's not that important. The main thing is that science has made one more step towards understanding the processes of evolution. Yet, one question remains. Has no one ever made it to the final stage in the history of attempts to recover extinct animals? After all, in the case of the aurochs, we only got a similar animal through breeding. But what about a complete copy? Is there at least one fortunate case in history when we turned back time and brought an extinct species back to Earth? Yes, there is such an example, and it deserves special attention. We are talking about the Pyrenean ibex, also known as the bucardo. During the Middle Ages, they inhabited the highlands of Spain and Portugal in large numbers. The main feature of the Pyrenean ibexes was their ability to move deftly on steep slopes and steep cliffs. They were agile, graceful animals with massive horns crowning their mighty heads like a crown. But in the 19th and 20th centuries, the number of Pyrenean goats began to decline rapidly. Hunting, poaching, disease, and limited habitat all became fatal to the population. The last Pyrenean goat, named Celia, roamed the mountain trails alone until she met her death from a fallen tree in 2000. However, the story of the Pyrenean ibex did not end there. Scientists, obsessed with bringing the species back to life, started an ambitious project that involved cloning. A year before her death, Celia was caught in the Ordesa y Monte Perdido National Park in Spain. Her skin samples were collected and frozen. It was not possible to prevent the animal's death, but scientists paved the way for the return of Pyrenean ibexes while Celia was still alive. Project author Jose Fulch from the Agri-Food Research and Technology Center in Aragon, Spain, used the frozen skin samples taken from Celia and introduced the DNA of the bucardo into the domestic goat's eggs, deprived of their original genetic material. This yielded cloned embryos, which were then implanted into other subspecies of the Spanish ibex. Of the 208 embryos implanted, only 7 survived, and only 1 was able to make it to full term. In 2003, the first ever clone of an extinct animal was born. The newborn bucardo lived less than 10 minutes and died of respiratory failure. An autopsy showed that the animal had a lung anomaly and was doomed. Such anomalies are not unusual in cloning. Now, the research team has to improve the technology and make new attempts to clone Celia. Admittedly, not all of the scientific community favors this project. Reproductive biologist William Holt from the Zoological Society of London believes that a few genetic samples of bucardo cannot be enough to create a viable population. There needs to be genetic diversity. Crossbreeding closely related individuals is fraught with the emergence of unhealthy offspring, which are unlikely to live a long life. There is another serious issue. Only the female bucardo can be cloned. Cloning a male requires genetic samples from another Pyrenean ibex, and these do not exist. Therefore, it still needs to be determined how the population of the extinct species will be restored in the future. Perhaps Celia clones will be crossbred with males of another species, but then their offspring will no longer be purebred Pyrenean ibex. Or maybe scientists will create technologies to easily remove one X chromosome without damage and add a Y chromosome to get a male instead of a female. Anyway, science doesn't stand still, and there is a chance that in a couple of years we might actually meet an animal we've all only seen in books before. Can we now take the plunge and spin the wheel of evolution backward?